is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 613. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you ready for some set review action today?
Oh yeah, I got my coffee. I got multiple drinks. I'm ready to kind of lock in here and do a solid, 4-hour show or whatever it ends up being.
Yep, I got my Arnold Palmer all filled up and ready to go. And yeah, let's dive in. This is going to be the set review. This is the uncommons and commons for Innistrad Midnight Hunt. And we're going to go over every single one of those so that you can be as prepared as possible for those initial events as you get in there. We're going to talk about the cards in terms of how good they are, how bad they are, if they're traps, and of course we're going to put a grade on them as well. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Before we get into that, though, we got to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com. This place to go for all things magic related on the internet. Anything you need, you can find over at CFB. Particularly, of course, for the set reviews, we like to mention that pre-orders are available for Innistrad Midnight Hunt. And if you want to head over to Channel Fireball, you can get in line, if you will, to order them. And the way it works is you put in a pre-order for whichever product you want, and then once they're able to ship it to you, they will. There's a date that Wizard sets where they're allowed to officially send it free into the world. And once they can do that, they'll get it in the mail and you'll get your stuff. While you're over there, you can check out the awesome free content on the front of the site. And if you want, you can even go for some paid content. That's where the real in-depth articles for people really looking to improve or maybe say win some money at an arena open or something along those lines. You can find it at CFB Pro over on the website. If you do end up picking up anything over there, if you'd use the affiliate code LR, it helps out the show, and we do appreciate it. The show is also brought to you by you via the Patreon. That's patreon.com/limited resources for all the information on that. You get some cool perks, and we really do appreciate each and every person who supports us over on Patreon. And this week, Luis, we have an exciting announcement. We are really excited to announce that we've partnered with a great company called FTX. And if you feel like you've heard that name before, it's probably because they've partnered with big names like Stephen Curry, Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, and they acquired TSM, which is the esports team that sponsors Kenji Numatanami, as well as contracts with Major League Baseball, and the stadium for the Miami Heat is called FTX Arena now, for example. So they're out there partnering with a bunch of big names.
Yeah, and now they've added the crown jewel to their ensemble, Limited Resources.
Yeah, so we have they are going to be a sponsor of the show going forward. And if you're wondering, well, what is FTX? Basically, they're a safe exchange where people can trade things like cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and other digital assets. And they're one of the world's biggest exchanges of this type. And they have both web-based and app-based platforms available. They're regulated in the U.S. and other places around the world. And they also put significant resources towards their environmental and philanthropic initiatives, which we really liked. So you might be asking, well, what does this have to do with LR? This is a Magic podcast. And it's funny because in our initial meeting with them, I actually asked the people over at FTX that same question, and they were really straightforward with us. They think that crypto and blockchain-based assets are going to be a big part of our lives going forward, and they want to be the place that you think of if you ever want to do any crypto trading or anything along those lines. They also feel that Magic players and like the LR audience tend to be a bit ahead of the curve and kind of early adopters for stuff like this. And so that's why, they approached us, or one of the reasons that they approached us for a sponsorship opportunity. So that's it. The show isn't changing or anything. We'll be talking about FTX more as we go forward, and we're really excited to have them on board as a sponsor for the show. We're also working with them in some cool ways, looking at some things like possibly charity events, Magic product giveaways for LR listeners, special promos for LR listeners, and other interesting stuff like that down the line.
Yeah, we're really excited about this partnership, and we want you to be excited as well. And one of the things that partnering with someone like FTX kind of gives us the opportunity to do is projects that we've wanted to get off the ground and maybe haven't been able to make time for. One of the big ones that we're going to be starting is LR drafts. We're going to be doing co-stream drafts once a month where me and Marshall, basically we fire up a stream, probably alternating whose it is. If we want a lot of people to watch, we'll probably use mine. But
what the heck? My stream's doing good. I've been doing it for almost a year straight now with my 1 day a week.
You're doing great, buddy. It's really impressive how much you've grown. We'll be hanging out and streaming and drafting and just kind of giving you like kind of bonus content. And that's one of the things that, having sponsors lets you do. So we're excited to kind of explore things in that vein. And it's really cool getting to partner with them and get to do that.
Yeah. And then, one last thing is we want to be really clear about this. And we were really clear with FTX in our talks with them, and they were 100% on board with us, that this is for people who want to explore investing in currencies and other digital assets. And, as an LR listener, you'll know that any type of investment like this comes with risk, and that you have to educate yourself and understand what you're doing before you do it. And, the idea here is if after getting interested in learning about this stuff, you want to try investing in it, then we recommend FTX as a place to go to do it. And, this is really important because this isn't financial advice. Neither Luis nor I are registered investors or anything like that. And we aren't telling you, hey, you should go invest in crypto. We're saying that if you want to, you can afford it and you feel ready to, from a preparation standpoint, that FTX is the place to go to do it.
Yeah, it's important to find a safe, trustworthy place, and FTX is that place. I've actually been going kind of deep in crypto over the last, 6-8 months, and so that's part of why this is so exciting to me. And it's, there's a lot of stuff in this space that you have to learn about, but I think it's cool. I think it's something a lot of folks are going to want to interact with, and in some cases, are just going to end up doing so just because crypto and blockchain and, a lot of the stuff in this space is going to be a bigger and bigger part of kind of the world moving forward. There's just a lot of exciting technology here. So yeah, getting to team up with FTX and getting to recommend them as the place to go is something that I'm really happy to do.
Yeah. And for my part, when we first started talking to them, I went and downloaded their app and I installed it and I put a little bit of money on it. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to use this thing to see if it's any good, right? Because I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending a bad product to our listeners. And it's great. It's really easy to use, really nice interface, all that stuff. I thought, wow, that they really have thought this through. This is really good. And I've been educating myself as much as I can. I feel like I had a decent understanding of crypto in this space, but it goes pretty deep. And I've been reading and listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff to really kind of familiarize myself more with the finer points of it. And, one of the things that I brought up to them as well is, and they brought up to us, I should say, is, if we do want to kind of create some spaces, not on the show directly, but off of it, where listeners can ask questions, do maybe like an AMA type thing or anything like that, from people who are really into this, like for their career, they said they were open to doing that too. So if that's something that we do down the line, that can help educate. And it's a really interesting space, even if you don't, even if you're not investing in it directly. At any rate, we want to say welcome to FTX, and we want to thank them for the opportunity. And we're really excited to have them on board. We'll talk more about them, of course, as we go forward in the weeks and months coming ahead. So let's get on to the show.
Well, I just want to note that if you want to learn more about their environmental initiatives, their philanthropy, they have a FTX Foundation, or just FTX in general, you can go to ftx.com. I know myself personally, I'm just looking forward to when we have Tom Brady call into the show. So we'll see about getting that going.
We'll get the AMA with Tom Brady and Stephen Curry on the same day. Or aren't they going to invite us on their
Right. No,
stuff? We're going to go. Isn't that how this
with stuff?
I'm waiting for the email, Tom. Okay, that's right. Yeah. So ftx.com, of course, we're going to have links in the show notes for all the stuff that we just mentioned there as well, if you'd like to check it out. Okay, let's get into the show. We're going to be covering every single common and uncommon. And what we like to do here, Luis, is we like to put a grade at the end of each of these cards.
Yeah. So when we look at these cards, we use a letter grade. And the letter grade, that ranges from A to F with a sideboard and build around grade as well. And by using these grades, it kind of puts what you call a punctuation mark on the what we talk about with the card. Most important is what we actually say about the card. That's going to let you know our opinions, where we think the card is good, bad, how to use it. But the letter grades are really kind of help put those cards in relation to each other. Our A's are bombs, game winners, cards that are good in many situations, especially when behind, and the best cards in the set, cards like Imrith or Meteor Swarm. You could ask the Lords of Limited about Meteor Swarm if you're interested. These are cards. Look, I've got so little to ride these days that I'm just going to ride that one out.
Good for you, buddy.
Can't buy a match in a tournament, but I went 3-0 in a draft one time. These are cards that actively pull you towards their colors. Headliners for a set, go-to cards, and reasons to be in a particular color, or in this case, pair of colors for Innistrad. Cards like Skullport Merchant or Magic Missile. C's are playables. These are the pawns of limited. They're pretty interchangeable, and you need some amount of them for your deck. There's cards like this are mediocre removal, solid creatures, kind of like your cards that are like numbered like 9 through 20 or whatever in your deck. Cards like Hill Giant, Herd Gorger, Hobgoblin Captain, Arborea Pegasus. I'm proud of you, by the way, for putting the Herd Gorger in a C and not in the B plus range. These are sometimes playable. You'd prefer not to run them. Mediocre / junky cards, just a little too expensive, a little too anemic. So cards like +2 Mace, Earth Cult Elemental. And worth noting in modern sets, the difference between C's and D's isn't that big. Like if you have to put one of the 3 or 4 D's in your deck, you're not happy about it. But honestly, they'll do just about a good of a job if you end up casting them.
Right.
F's are cards that are unplayable in basically all scenarios. Cards that cost 10 mana or have no effect. Cards like, Bard class or Sorcerer class. The 2 subgrades we have are sideboard. So these are cards that rarely make the main deck, but can be very powerful out of the sideboard if you're playing best of 3. And the grades for this are when you sideboard it in. So cards like, you find a cursed idol, artifact, enchant removal, destroy target flyer. These tend to be cards, or we've seen more color hosers recently, and those can be sideboard as well. Though I guess in AFR, the color hosers were main deckable. They're kind of designed to be that. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, we've got build around cards that really don't do much on their own. Like they're just not designed to work by themselves. But if you properly enable them, they can be amazing. Teleportation Circle was the sweetest build around in AFR, for example. Yep.
Okay. We're going to jump into the commons and uncommons here. Now, what we like to do is start with the signpost uncommons. So these are the gold uncommons for the set. And these help give us a view into what the archetype of that color pair might be working towards or doing. Some of them are really clear. Other times it's a little muddy. But this is a good place to start to get us an idea of, are we talking tokens, +1/+1 counter, sacrifice? What are we looking at here? And we'll get a chance to do that. Now, last set review, we switched to doing these in the order of mana cost from cheapest to most expensive for each color. But we're really hitting this early, and we've only got the card image gallery. Scryfall isn't quite updated yet, which is our go-to place, really for any Magic search. And if you don't use Scryfall, please get onto Scryfall. It's easily the best
it's
one
so
ever.
Good.
It's so insanely good. But again, we're like a couple hours after the full set got spoiled, and they're still just filling those last things in. So we're going to be doing this in alphabetical order for this one. But when we go, we'll be switching back for the rares review, and we'll continue with the converted mana cost, or what is it called? Mana value now?
Yeah, it's mana value, and I just want to highlight, we just wanted to get this out as soon as possible. So yeah, that's bear with us as we do.
All right, so our first card then is Arcane Infusion. And this is the blue-red signpost uncommon, and it costs blue-red. It's an instant. It says, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then critically, it has flashback, one of the, if not one of the absolute best limited mechanics of all time. This lets you play the card from your graveyard for its flashback cost and then exile it if you do. And the flashback cost in this case is 3 blue-red, so 5 mana total.
Oh, man, I love Arcane Infusion for multiple reasons. One, it's a sweet 2-for-1 that offers card selection, right? Because you can cast it, get a spell, flash it back, get another spell. Mm-hmm. The other is that it implies strongly that the blue-red deck is going to be a deck I want to play. It's going to be a deck full of instants and sorceries, which is kind of a throwback to original Innistrad, where Burning Vengeance was the kind of the build around of choice. Of course, a lot of blue-red themes do fall into this vein, but Arcane Infusion looks good to me. I would be pretty happy putting this into any deck that has something probably around like 10, 11 lines of instants or sorceries to hit.
Which is a lot more than the average deck has. So this really does need to be kind of towards that goal. I would give Arcane Infusion a C+. It is still a little clunky that you have to pay 2 mana to get the spell into your hand and then 5 extra mana that, you're paying 7 mana total to get a 2-for-1, but it certainly seems playable. And let's not forget, with anything with flashback, if you can discard it or mill it or just get it into your graveyard some other way, then you're just getting free value off of it.
Yeah, and I just looked it up where if you have 10 other instants and sorceries, you're 71% to see at least one in your...
Did you just hypergeometric calculator it?
I sure did. Hypergeometric calculator is a useful tool.
I love that thing. Yeah,
so 70% to see a card is not bad, especially given that it has flashback. And, as we're going to see, you getting rewards for casting spells, of course, makes this even more appealing. So, I like C+ on this one.
Okay. C+ for Arcane Infusion. Next is Blade Stitched Scob. It is blue-black. So here's our Dimir signpost. It's a 2/3 zombie soldier, and it says other zombies you control get +1/+0. So really straightforward. This is like a classic signpost, right? It's also a good one. It's a 2-mana 2/3 that pumps the rest of your zombies, not itself. Still, that's good stats for a 2-drop. And then, the more zombies you have, the better. There's really not much else to say about it than that.
It's an efficient card at its own cost. 2-mana 2/3 is not a bad rate, and then blue-black tends to make a decent amount of zombies. I also really like +1/+0 specifically because the zombie tokens in the set have Decayed, which is an ability that says they can't block, and then when they attack, sacrifice them, which is a really interesting take on tokens. We're going to talk more about it as we see zombies with Decayed. Not every single zombie has Decayed, but a lot of them do in this set, and +1/+0 is basically perfect. You don't care about toughness on these creatures. So I like Blade Stitch Scob, especially as you can draft maybe a little bit more aggressive of a blue-black deck than normal, which I think is cool.
Yeah. And, to me, this look, you can play it on its own, right? A 2-mana 2/3 is still a thing. So it wouldn't quite be in the Build-A-Rand camp. But, the really great decks are going to have like 2 of these, right? And then a good zombie build out around them. That's really powerful. Like if you can get access to 2 of these where occasionally you have 2 on the battlefield and you'll often have 1, then that's really good. I would say probably like B- for Blade Stitch Scob, assuming you can put some zombies around it.
Yeah, I like B-. It, if you have this and 4 zombies, it's a B-. So it doesn't really take much more, like in your deck. It doesn't take much more to be better than that. Like I would pay blue-black for a 2/3 and put that card in my deck almost always.
Okay. So are we looking at multiples? Is there 2 of each of these? I've got Corpse Cobble next, which is also.
I guess there's just multiple blue-black or of each color uncommons. That's cool. That means they both. It seems like they both lean together as well. Yes.
Yeah, so that's good. So that'll give us even more of there's 2 signs on our signpost. So this next one is called Corpse Cobble, and it's also blue-black for the cost. This one, though, is an instant, and it says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice any number of creatures. You create an XX blue and black zombie creature token with menace, where X is the total power of the sacrificed creatures. And here, this is critical. You can flash it back for 3 blue-black.
Yeah, so you'd have to have a lot of tokens to make this really strong, because when you sack 2 Decayed zombie tokens, you're getting a lot of value, right? You're getting 4/4 menace for 2 mana, plus of course the 2 tokens, and then you can flash it back. I guess you could even Corpse Cobble by sacking the first token to the flashback one if you want to make something really big. This doesn't look that strong to me, though.
It looks pretty bad. I mean, this is the type of thing where if you're sacrificing like viable, reasonable creatures to it, you're just sort of putting all your eggs in one basket and also costing yourself a card to do it. And then if you've already done it once, it's going to be difficult to do again. You need expendable creatures like what you were talking about early, ones that are going to die anyway.
It is an instant. That does help. So imagine you can leave 2 mana up, not the hardest thing in the world, right? And they target a 3/3 with removal spell. It's kind of like a Village Rites, but instead of getting 2 cards, you get a 3/3 menace.
Yeah.
So on that note, it's not too bad, but just on its face, this is very similar to an aura that just gives a creature menace, right?
Yes.
Like you're not going up in power and toughness.
Yes, that's a good way to view it.
Yeah, it's a great way to view it. It's really, really insightful.
Really great, yeah.
the main advantage you get here is with Decayed, where you can sack cards that have drawbacks and just, negate those drawbacks, or if you have something enchanted with an aura that's not untapping or what have you. But overall, Corpse Gobble looks kind of like a C- to me. Like, it's got some potential here, but it's not a card I'm going to actively go after.
Yeah, it looks like a D to me. Like, it looks like a card that you won't play that often. But maybe not a disaster.
I could go with D plus.
Okay, D plus and D, as it were. Next is for green-white. So this is Dawnheart Wardens, and it is 1 green-white for a 3/3 human warlock. It's got Vigilance. So 3 mana, 3/3 Vigilance, Ds. And then it has Coven. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn.
So when I first read Coven cards, I was like, ooh, different powers? Does that mean like different abilities? What does that mean? But it's just like, oh, they literally mean power, toughness.
They actually meant power, yeah.
It's one of the Magic, I think, generally has fairly good names for its stuff, especially, there's some games that really don't. But in this case, different powers does, I think, kind of fail a little bit here. Like, that's how they have to say it for the ability, but different powers does not sound like different attack values. In any case, 3 mana, 3/3 Vigilance is a good deal. You're going to be happy with that. And Coven doesn't seem that hard to get going, in the sense that it's less going to be about making sure all your creatures have different stats and more like, how do you have 3 or 4 creatures in play? Because that's not always going to happen.
Right. But, I mean, there's oftentimes that's attached to mana value, right? Like, 2 mana, 2/2, 3 mana, 3/3, that kind of thing.
It's cool. You can play this, and then it immediately triggers if Coven is on and the rest of your creatures get +1/+0. So it's kind of buffing the rest of your team even when it can't attack. And then, of course, later it starts attacking as a 4/3. Yeah, this looks like a B- to me. Yeah. Just like 3 mana, 3/3 Vigilance with some upside. And when Coven triggers, it's going to be good because you have 3 creatures in play. So that's a pretty reasonable ability to put on Dawnheart Wardens.
Yeah, I like Dawnheart Wardens at B-. And the fallback plan, 3 mana, 3/3 Vigilance. Sure, I'm in. Next card is called Diregraph Rebirth. This is 3 green-black for a sorcery. It says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature that died this turn. So this is a sorcery. So we're talking about, combat, basically. Second main phase type spell here. It says return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. But here's the key. It has flashback for 5 green-black.
So this is Unburial Rites, but instead of costing 5 and 4, it costs 5 and 7 with that little discount kicker thing, where if you can get a creature to trade, this is going to cost 3 mana on the front side and only 5 mana on the back side. And there's a possibility of more. Like the creature you return didn't have to die this turn or anything like that. This is a pretty unconditional card. Yeah, I like Diregraph Rebirth a lot. I would give this a B+. It's just going to be a pretty easy to get going 2-for-1. Like, Unburial Rites was awesome in draft, and I think this card is a little bit worse but comparable.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. I don't like it quite as much as B+. I would give it B-. My main thinking is just, A, you need a target. Okay, that's not that hard. You should be able to get a target for it, but in order for it to be like good, you need to cast it and flash it back, or you need to get something back that's like a significant. You need to get back a 7-drop that you only paid 3 or 4 for this. If you're paying 5 mana to get back your 2-drop, and then you're paying, say, 5 mana again later, a discount on the flashback to get back like a 4-drop, that's okay, right? That's still, you're still up a card and stuff, but it's a little clunky. And so that's why I have it a little bit lower than you do. But I like Diregraph Rebirth quite a bit. And I don't think there'll be any problem in Innistrad green-black to get creatures into your graveyard. Traditionally, that has been a very easy thing to do.
Well, part of what I like about it is casting it the first time naturally draws the game out to where you can cast it a second time. And the second time you cast it, you're probably getting something pretty strong out of the deal. Because at that point, you're going to have more selection.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, think about it. If you play a bomb, they have to kill it or you win, right? So it's either in the graveyard or you're winning. And if you have this, then you're good to go. Next is Faithful Mending. It's white-blue for an instant. It says you gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, then womp, discard 2 cards. And then it has flashback for 1 blue-white.
So Faithful Mending's an interesting card. This is definitely something I'm a little more interested in for constructed than limited because there's not really a life gain theme in blue-white. So the gaining 2 life isn't really going that far for you. And on its face, draw 2, discard 2, like Faithless Looting style effects just haven't tended to be that good in limited. Because unless you're discarding cards with madness, which that's not what's going on here, you're going to end up just being down a card. And even the flashback doesn't change that. You like if you cast and flash this back, you gained 4 life, which isn't bad. You drew 4 and discarded 4. I don't know that that's really going to be worth doing. If you have a lot of flashback cards or graveyard synergies, because there's like the self-mill style of thing where you want a bunch of cards in your graveyard, this gets a little bit more appealing. I just don't think most blue-white decks are actually going to go that direction. So as opposed to being a signpost uncommon, this is kind of I think a card uncommon? Yeah, it's a card that I think is going to play interestingly in constructed, but is not really the on pace to be like a very potent limited card. This looks like a D to me.
It looks like a D or a D minus to me, Faithful Mending. You know, I know that there's like a tendency to think, well, if I have a lot of flashback, then I could make this worth it. But I don't think that that's true. If you replace this with just say a vanilla random 2-drop and then just kept your flashback cards that you were going to discard to this and just cast them and then flash them back, you probably are just going to be better off on average than trying to, I don't know, eke out some value from a Faithful Mending.
How much work do you have to do to make this into like a divination? It's a lot. So
a lot of work. Yeah.
So I like D for Faithful Mending.
Same. D minus for me for Faithful Mending.
Oh, okay.
It's getting nabbed. Yep. What about Flesh Taker? God, that's creepy artwork.
This is a real like Children of the Corn vibe here.
Dude, I'm not feeling this.
White black for a 2/2 human assassin. Also, it's I guess a human wearing a cow's head because it does not look like a human to me.
It is exactly that.
For a 2/2 uncommon, it says whenever you sacrifice another creature, you gain 1 life and scry 1, and 1 sacrifice another creature. Flesh Taker gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This card's awesome.
It's a
2-mana 2/2 that whenever you have mana up and other creatures, it can present as a 4/4 or a 6/6 because there's no 1 per turn limit here, and every creature you sack gets you a life and a scry. Like this card is a beating. I would put this into any white black deck, and if you can enable it with tokens / cards that you don't mind dying, which this set has plenty of both, then Flesh Taker becomes awesome. But even without it, I think this card's very, very good. So I would give Flesh Taker a B+. This card looks like one I'm very happy with.
It's funny because these types of cards, they have 2 modes. When you play them on turn 2 and then you play a creature on turn 3 and attack with it, it's unblockable because your opponent doesn't want to chump block your creature very often, especially if you have a cheap or expendable creature. So it keeps that way for a while where it's like basically unblockable because they don't want to throw, a real creature in front of it for your worst creature. And then it switches to must be blocked if able because all of a sudden it becomes lethal if they don't block it because you've got 4 creatures and they're looking at their life total like, oh no, I'm just dead to this thing. So it's really funny because it plays out in 2 very different ways, but both of them put a lot of pressure. I'm with you. B+ on Flesh Taker. I really don't like the art. That is so scary.
The flavor text does describe me well, though.
It does. A soulless husk of endless hunger. Oh, man. Luis's Tombstone. Lock it in. Let's go to the next card. And by the way, red-black, sacrifice seems to be on the menu there. Grizzly Ghoul is next. It's 2 green-black for a 4/3 zombie bear. It has trample, so 4 mana 4/3 trample, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature that died this turn. Nice. Not hard at all to imagine this being a 5/4 trample for 4.
I mean, if this is a 5/4 trample, you feel like you got there.
Yep.
If it's a 6/5, you obviously just ran up the score completely, and that all that takes is a trade.
Yeah.
And then if it's a 4/3, well, that's fine too. You're not going to be unhappy about putting this card in your deck where you pay 4 mana for a 4/3. I will note, based on past experience with morbid style stuff, it works less well than you think.
Definitely.
Like morbid just doesn't go off. It seems as simple. Oh yeah, you just trade 2/2s, but like it doesn't play out that way. Your opponent also, when you're playing black green, they're just not going to want to enable your morbid style cards, so they're just less likely to trade. So I like the card. I think it's going to be good, but don't look at this as like, oh, this is going to be a 4 mana 6/5 on turn 4. I just don't think that situation is going to come up quite as often as you might think.
Yeah, or if it does, you're going to have to trade off something that you didn't want to, right? You have to attack your good 2-drop into their bad 2-drop and make them go, okay, I guess I'll trade. And then you go land Grizzly Ghoul, go. What grade did you give it?
I would give Grizzly Ghoul B-.
Yeah, it's right on the C plus B- range for me.
Tending towards C plus as well. But I think B-, especially early in the format where people maybe aren't quite in the mindset of like, hey, don't let creatures die against black-green. Plus, if you can pair this with like a 2-mana removal spell or something, that's not too bad.
Not too bad either. I like B- for Grizzly Ghoul. Wow, they really nailed. This is the Marshall and Louis set for sure. This card's called Hungry for More. It's red-black for a sorcery. It says create a 3/1 black and red vampire creature token with trample, lifelink, and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, and it has flashback for 1 black-red.
Here's my prediction. I will think this card is good, and you will think it is bad.
So it's funny because my initial take is that I would think this card is bad, but I was going to say that these cards always overperform.
The reason that even Marshall is willing to admit that a card that puts you kind of down a card isn't bad is this is so much life. The lifelink really matters here. It's a 12-point life swing, like because this is a kind of a reprint-ish of Hellspark Elemental, the 3/1 haste for 2 that died end of turn and had flashback, or whatever the whatever it was called in Shards, Unearth, yeah. But your natural inclination, right, is like, oh, I just won't block it because why would I trade a card for something that's going to die anyway, right?
Right.
Well, if you do that twice, you're down 6 and the opponent's up 6.
Yep.
Like that's a lot of life. You can't just ignore that. Life does matter, and the cost and flashback on this aren't that expensive. Plus, imagine you go Hungry for More, attack you for 3. You're like, all right, I'm going to take it. I don't want to trade, I'm not sacking a 2/2 to prevent 2 damage. And you're like, okay, well, post combat, I'm going to go ahead and sack it to some effect for value.
That's really the key here, right? Like, yeah, I mean, the fact that it dies or you can sacrifice it, it enables Morbid. It lets you throw this thing to something else. That to me is really the kicker. And then also the fact that it can get incidentally milled and you can just get a nice little value hit for 3. Look, this goes in an aggressive vampires deck, right? I mean, this has to be in context. You wouldn't play this in a control deck. Even in some mid-range decks, where you couldn't take advantage of some of the stuff, it may not make the cut. Because let's not forget, sometimes they have a 4/4, right? And yeah, you can gain 3 life off of this, but that's it. Right. It's not that great. So you do need to do at least a little bit more. But as I said before, yes, you were completely right, Luis, that my initial inclination on cards like this is not worth it. But I have learned over the course of the years that that is not the case. And this one's actually one of the better versions that I've seen. Yeah.
I think that the 2 main reasons to play this are you're aggressive and you have sacrifice/morbid stuff where ideally you have both those things going on, but I think it's totally fine to just play it in a really aggressive deck or a deck that has enough sacrifice incentive. So I like Hungry for More at C+. I think it's a solid card.
It's exactly where I have it. C+ for Hungry for More. Join the Dance is next. It's green-white for a sorcery. It says create 2 1/1 white human creature tokens, and you can flash it back. It's a little pricey, though. It's 3 white-green to flash it back, so 5 mana.
Ooh, some real Midsommar vibes here.
Don't say that, dude. Woody made me watch that movie, and I haven't recovered.
I know. That's why I mentioned it.
I hate it.
I'll be joining the dance. This is a great card because 2 mana for 2 1/1 tokens is already fine. Like that's a card that you frequently just play, and flash it back for 5 mana. It's just tons of value. This can put a lot of creatures onto the board. Plus, green-white tends to be pretty good at going wide and getting value out of all that. So I like Join the Dance a lot. I would give Join the Dance a B-.
Yeah, I think B- is good for it too. And this just to like snapshot here, we talked about Dawnhart Wardens. This gives all your other creatures +1/+0 until end of turn. So if you can get Coven and trigger the Wardens, Join the Dance is a type of card that can really pay you off for it. So that's just one example of just the cards that we've looked at so far. Next is Rite of Oblivion. It's black-white for a sorcery. It says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, guess what you do? Sacrifice a non-land permanent. So the effect is exile target non-land permanent, and you can flash it back for 2 black-white.
Rite of Oblivion's interesting. It's quite powerful if you can enable it. Mm-hmm. If you have good sacrifice fodder, tokens mainly, And because it's, it's card disadvantage, but it exiles something, and then you also get to flash it back. So getting to use it twice, like there's some games where Rite of Oblivion is just gonna just KO them, right? You're playing against red green, they play a 4-mana card, you're like, kill with Rite, and then flash it back on your 6-mana card.
Yep.
So you're down 1 card in that exchange. You traded 3 for 2, but all it takes is, well, 1 card like joined the dance, and all of a sudden you're back to a 2 for 2, except you got to kill 2 really big things. So it's a little tricky to use. I'd almost want to give it a build around B, where you can't just put this in a random black-white deck, I don't think, and expect the great things about it. But I think a lot of black-white decks, because black-white sacrifice is a theme here, you are going to be able to utilize this well. I think this is going to be a card you're going to want to pick fairly early.
I think so too. This is one of those cards that goes down in value in multiples. The first one probably quite good. The second one starts to get a little sketchy. And then also, I mentioned it right at the top, but it's a sorcery, and that does limit its application. Cards like this that are an instant where you can sacrifice something that was going to die anyway. You can chump block and sacrifice. That type of stuff ends up pumping these up to really quite a powerful level. And they were careful with this not to do that. So keep that in mind. You are going to have to like legit sacrifice something, on the board. But as you said, the black-white theme is sacrifice. And I have faith in our friends in R&D to give us a bunch of stuff to throw under the bus. And that's why I think Rite of Oblivion's quite strong. I would take the first one at like a B- to B level. Unconditional removal that only costs 2 mana is just really hard to come by.
So next up we have Root Coil Creeper. This is blue-green for a 2/2 plant horror. Tap it for 1 mana of any color. Tap it for 2 mana of any one color, but you can spend this mana only to cast spells from your graveyard, so flashback cards. And you can pay blue-green tap and exile it to return target card with flashback you own from exile to your hand.
God, I love this card.
Incredible. A 2-mana 2/2 that tap for 1 mana of any color would be like a B-.
Yeah.
Like, that's already good. It's a 2-mana 2/2 that ramps you and fixes your colors. But then all of a sudden, it not only helps give you an extra mana to cast flashback cards, but eventually you get to cash in your mana dork for a flashback card, which will give you 2 more casts of the card because, well, it has flashback. So this Root Coil Creeper looks like a B+ to me. This card just kind of does it all.
Yeah, this is extreme value and really no downside. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to cast Root Coil Creeper, cast flashback spells, get them back, and just dominate. This is awesome. B+ for Root Coil Creeper. I just hope this is a format that gives me the time to do that. Next is Sacred Fire. It's red-white for an instant. It says it does 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life. And it has flashback for 4 white-red. These are sweet designs, man. I love these just simple classic designs like this. This card's sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's Lightning Helix at -1 on the numbers, but flashback of 6 mana. And Lightning Helix is just one of the best Magic cards of all time, right?
Yeah,
like
it's an all-timer. Yeah.
Top percentage here. Sacred Fire is awesome. This is another B+ for me. Just like 2 mana to kill something, gain 2 life, and then flash it back later. It's just hard not to get good value out of this.
Right. It's instant speed. I like B+ for Sacred Fire. Next is Scorm Skrillex. It is 3 blue-red for a 2/4 Drake Horror with flying. So a 2/4 flyer for 5. It says instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Okay. And then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Oh boy. Finisher.
Cool card. I think this is probably worse than just a 5-mana 4/4 flyer, but 5-mana 4/4 flyer is pretty good.
Yeah, so obviously the upside on this card's way higher, right? You could hit for 6 or 8 damage with this if you were kind of all in on the instants and sorceries archetype that we see for blue-red here. As you said, though, Luis, on average, having that extra 2 power just sort of all the time might be better. But still, this does have some application, especially if you do kind of move in on that archetype, right?
Yeah, you'll want to be a reasonably heavy spells deck because you can't pay 5 for a 2/4 flyer. You do need this to be, 4 or 6 power. I also am just not putting a whole lot of value on making your spells cheaper once you have 5 mana. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not nothing. It still matters, but it's just not going to be
as powerful. It counts for
powerful.
flashback, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can flashback spells on the cheap. I would give Storm Skrillex like a C+. I think that it's fine, but you're not going to be like tripping over yourself to take it in blue-red.
Yeah, baseline C+ makes sense. I think it's probably a build around B. Like, I think that if you have that deck, it'll like if somebody plays it and they say go and you don't have an answer and you look and they've got 3 or 4 cards in their hand, like you could be taking an absolutely monumental amount of damage the next turn. Let's see what's next. Sunrise Cavalier. This is 1 red white for a 3/3 human knight. It's got trample and haste. 3 mana, 3/3 trample haste. That is a beater. And it says, if it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as Sunrise Cavalier enters the battlefield. And whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control.
All right, so let's talk about night and day for a second here, because this is kind of a new take on night and day, and I think a superior one to the Innistrad Werewolves from original Innistrad, where they actually, I think, fixed a lot of kind of the issues that they previously had, which is pretty nice because the original ones, they played okay. Obviously, like the flavor of it is awesome, but having the way the original ones worked is they flipped when either nobody cast a spell on a turn or someone cast 2 spells on a turn. Those are the 2 like flip conditions.
Right.
But what I think was pretty bad about those was you would end up in a spot where you're like, all right, I guess I'm going to pass the turn to try to flip my werewolves, but then your opponent cast a spell.
Yeah, which was a cool tension, but also really took it out of your hands.
Right. So the way that Innistrad Werewolves work, or in this set, Midnight Hunt Werewolves, is cards that have Nightbound and Daybound. They say if a player doesn't cast a spell on their turn, it becomes night, and then during night, if a player casts 2 spells on their turn, it becomes day at the end of turn.
It's up to you then.
The next turn it flips. So like if you have a Daybound Werewolf out and you cast no spells, on the next turn it'll flip to night, and then your werewolf will do whatever nighttime stuff it does. If you have if it's night and you cast 2 spells on the next turn, it'll flip to day. It all keys off your turn. It all keys off what you are doing. And I think that that's just a huge upgrade in terms of play experience, especially, funnily enough, especially for Commander, where once you have 3 or 4 people in the game, it just becomes impossible to flip werewolves, right? When you just have to count on nobody casting a spell, that seems pretty tough.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
okay.
And then another take on this is the cards like this one, where Sunrise Cavalier says, if it's neither night or day, because the natural state of a Magic turn is that it's not night or day.
That's right.
It just is. Then it becomes day as this enters the battlefield, and this will trigger. So this card's interesting, where it wants other cards that flip night and day, because other cards that flip night and day will help it trigger multiple times. But once you've started flipping it from night to day, it's going to be one of those 2 things, because it just stays that way unless something changes it.
Right.
So then this won't actually have an enter the battlefield ability, which is pretty funny, right? Because you end up in a spot where, yes, you want a bunch of cards that are flipping the status, because this, as long as it flips from night to day or day to night, this gets a +1/+1 counter. But once you're down that path, it no longer has the ETB ability. So
right.
A little bit of a trade-off.
It just gets it started. I mean, any of the night or day-bound things do the same, right? Like when they ETB, it becomes day.
Yeah.
I believe. Isn't that how it works?
So there are cards that have day-bound and night-bound, and they say on them that, like, it'll flip from day to night depending on, whether you cast spells or didn't cast spells.
Mm-hmm.
But cards like this don't do that. This just triggers when it comes into play.
Yeah, but I'm saying the other ones also trigger, like basically anything that cares about day-night makes it day when it ETBs, right? To like start to go from having nothing to one or the other.
No, I don't think
Is that not true?
No.
Oh, okay.
So if you cast, say, Bird Admirer, that's another card we're going to talk about later. It's 2 and a green for a 1/4 reach, and it has Daybound. It says if a player casts no spells during their own turn, it becomes night next turn. So you cast Bird Admirer. It's not night nor day. It just is, you're playing Magic.
Okay.
And then if you end up casting no spells on your turn, or if they cast no spells on their turn, it becomes night next turn. And then once it's night, it becomes a 3/5 reach and says has Nightbound. If a player casts at least 2 spells during their own turn, it becomes day next turn. So it's it now has conditions as to how it can flip day and night, but the flip cards don't intrinsically flip it from day or night unless it says they do.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so I assumed that. I don't know why I thought that. Okay, all right. Well, let's carry on.
So let me just to summarize it. There are 2 types of day night cards in general. There are cards like the Sunrise Crusader here that say when it enters the battlefield, if it's neither day nor night, it becomes day. Then there are the flip cards that have daybound and nightbound that now, while they're in play, have this condition where if any player doesn't cast a spell on their turn, or if a player casts 2 spells on their turn, it'll flip to the next one, depending on which side it's on.
Mm-hmm. So the first one becomes that, and then it flips back and forth after that.
The first one, so when you cast a flip card, it is not night or day. But then as soon as someone doesn't cast a spell on their turn, it'll be night next turn. Then it's night. But once it becomes night or day, it stays in a perpetual state of night or day until I actually don't think it can actually not be night or day unless there's something that stops that.
So the way I thought it worked was like if a daybound creature enters a battlefield, it becomes day to set that stage. That's not true. Okay.
No, now it's actually funny.
It's still nothing until something changes, is what you're saying.
It's neither night nor day when in a general game of Magic. Once a card makes it night, it just stays night until something changes that.
Yeah. Again, the way I had read it was that it would become the whether it's day or night is determined by when a day or nightbound creature enters the battlefield. But I guess that's not true.
That's why we're doing the set review to teach people.
All right, so
how it goes on.
So let's get back to Sunrise Cavalier then. So if it's neither day or night, so this does do that then. The thing that I thought it did, this actually does that. And then it starts, by the way, this is like even better. You could put the counter on target creature you control. You just start throwing counters around as day and night happens. That's insane. Yeah.
I mean, every time it flips, and note that these cards also trigger on the opponent's messing with the weather or the day or night spectrum. So red-white, in fact, isn't the strongest when it comes to, or like the most day-night color pair, because white doesn't have any of the day-bound cards. So red does have these werewolves with day-bound, but white doesn't. And a lot of what's going to happen in your red-white deck is you're going to play this, you're going to make it day because you haven't messed with it before and it's only a 3-cost card. And then if your opponent starts messing with day or night off their day-bound stuff, this is going to start triggering.
Yeah, that's really brutal, right? And is that more likely given that this is in red-white?
I think it's more likely that your opponent will be messing with
that's what I'm thinking too.
The day-night stuff as opposed to you.
Okay. What do you want to give Sunrise Cavalier? There's a lot to like here. A 3/3 trample haste for 3 with upside is like really pretty awesome.
A lot of the times in the game, this is going to be, 3 mana for of just a 4/4 trample haste.
Yeah.
If you play this and it's not night or day, you can just put the counter on itself. This looks like a B+ to me. I don't see this card really going wrong, and it stays in play with additional value as
it doesn't get a counter, right? Can you say what you said again?
So
no,
if you
just
play
with
this,
the
if you play this and it's not night or day, it'll become day and immediately trigger and put a counter on itself.
No, it says when day becomes night or night becomes day, you get the counter.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you won't get the first one, but then after that, you will.
Okay, but this sets the tone when it first goes in, then if it changes from there.
Right.
All right, well, a lot to learn on this card. But
absolutely, but still, this is sick. This card's awesome.
A 3/3 trample haste for 3 would be a B. We've already seen, I mean, the bugbear in AFR was very good, and it had pack tactics going, but still it was a 3/3 haste for 3. It was great. This has trample and multiple abilities.
Yeah. So I like B+ for Sunrise Cavalier.
Me too.
Okay. Unnatural Moonrise is next. This is green-red for a sorcery. It says it becomes night. Until end of turn, target creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And it flashes back for 2 green-red.
So wait, what does Knight do?
Depends on the card, doesn't it?
So in this case, it actually doesn't do anything. This card intrinsically doesn't care about it being Knight. But when you play this, you're basically trying to get a card back here. And it's not that hard with the trample, but now that I'm looking at this, I do want to mention one more thing that we didn't cover in Sunrise Calendar somehow after talking about it for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're getting through this. Once it becomes day or night, it now always has it always has the ability of a player not playing spells or a player playing 2 spells to flip it for the rest of the game. It doesn't matter what's in play. Just once it is day or night, for the rest of the game, there is, if you played no spells and it's day, flip to night. If you played 2 spells and it's night, flip to day. I just want to make
night
that
gets tracked the whole time.
It gets tracked for the rest of the game, which is actually kind of annoying if neither player has cards that care about that, but you still have to do it.
Yep. Okay.
In any case, Unnatural Moonrise, I think you have to value the night part of this
a lot
for this to be good, because you're paying 2 mana to maybe get a card back, and if they have a big enough blocker or removal or bounce spell, you just get hosed. And giving +1/+1 trample is just not that exciting. So this looks like a build around C, where it's like mediocre if you care about night and extremely bad if you don't.
Yep, that's what I think too. Build around C or something. It doesn't look very good. Next is Vampire Socialite. This is black-red for a 2/2 Vampire Noble with Menace. And it says, when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other vampire you control. Wow. And as long as an opponent lost life this turn, each other vampire you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Dang.
So the vampire theme is your opponent lost life this turn. Very thematic, right? You bit them. They lost some blood.
Yeah.
And this is a 2-mana 2/2 menace that triggers ETB, and just for the rest of the game, as long as this is in play, pays you off for your opponent losing life whenever you play a vampire. So obviously a fantastic card. Not even really a build around. I would play this as my only vampire, I think, because red-black for a 2/2 menace is playable. And if you're red-black, you're going to have other vampires. It's not going to be hard.
Yep. I like it at B+ for Vampire Socialite.
Yeah, these are some pretty pushed uncommons.
They are. Last one is Winterthorn Blessing. This is blue-green for a sorcery. It says put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature you control. Tap up to 1 target creature you don't control, and that creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step, and then you can flash this back for 1 green-blue. Nice.
And this card's going to do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
You want to be aggressive to use this, but think of this as kind of like a 1/1 haste Frostlinks with flashback, right? It ends up giving you a +1/+1 in stats, tapping down a creature for a turn, and then you get to do it again. There's some games where you're like, first of all, you're going to go Winterthorn Blessing, flash it back in the same turn, and just crunch your opponent. Or there's some where they have one big blocker where you're like, play this, attack, it doesn't untap. Next turn, if they play another blocker, you can play this again, or you can save it for when their big blocker finally does untap. And as long as you're pushing through damage, this card's really good. It's not a card I would put in a control deck, but it looks fantastic for a blue-green tempo or aggro deck.
Okay. I feel like what you said at the beginning, really, it's going to be responsible for just a ton of damage coming over. And I don't know how aggressive taking a look at these 2 uncommons, they don't seem to go well together in the sense of Root Coil Creeper seems to be based on more like ramp and value, where Winterthorn Blessing seems to be based on more like, controlling the board and getting damage through. But, it does have flashback and you can buy it back and all that, so they work well together on that front. Less excited about this one than the Creeper.
Oh, for sure.
It's powerful.
It's a little more narrow of a card. Mm-hmm. I would give Winterthorn Blessing a C+.
Yeah. Okay. C+. I mean, it is kind of a combo removal plus pump spell, and those can really pile on some damage quickly.
if you killed your opponent before these things wear off, it's a removal spell, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's even hand disruption, or it gets rid of their cards too. So
you took the creature out of the equation for multiple turns. So I like C+ for Winterthorn Blessing.
Okay, C+ for that. Now there's two more uncommons. This is a little hard to follow along with at home, so apologies for that. But they are flip cards, transform cards, whatever they're called, double face cards. The first one is called Devoted Graphkeeper, and it is it's white-blue for a 2/1 human peasant. And it says, when it enters the battlefield, mill 2 cards. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, tap target creature you don't control. And it has Disturb for 1 blue-white. You may cast this card from your graveyard transformed for its Disturb cost. Transformed means on the other side. The other side is called Departed Soulkeeper. It's a 3/1 flying that can block only creatures with flying. And if Departed Soulkeeper would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, you exile it instead.
So Disturb is basically creature flashback, except you get a different creature than the first one.
Okay.
It's really cool. Obviously, we're going to love Disturb.
Yeah.
And this card looks really sweet. 2 mana, 2/1, mill 2, and then whenever you flash a card back or cast a Disturb card, actually, both count as casting spells from your graveyard, you get to tap a creature. So it's a nice little aggressive push. And then when this trades off, you get a 3 mana, 3/1 flying. Like it can't
That's
block
dope.
flyers or can't block non-flyers, but a 3 mana, 3/1 flyer that comes out of a 2 mana, 2/1 with multiple good abilities, because milling 2 is definitely upside in this set. You get to mill flashback and Disturb cards. I like Devoted Graphkeeper at B+, and I mean it's gold, so I guess you can't necessarily slam it first pick always, but wow, this card's really strong.
It's really strong. I like B+ for Devoted Graphkeeper as well. Next is Kessig Naturalist. This is green-red for a 2/2 human werewolf. And whenever Kessig Naturalist attacks, you add green or red to your mana pool. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And it's day-bound. It says if a player casts no spells during their turn, it becomes night. Next turn, and it transforms to Lord of the Ulvenwald. And this is a werewolf, of course. It's a 3/3 that says other wolves and werewolves you control get +1/+1. And whenever Lord of the Ulvenwald attacks, add green or red. And similarly, that mana doesn't leave as steps and phases end.
So this is mostly a mana dork. It's a 2 mana 2/2 that can, ramp you a little bit. It's a little awkward because if they have a 2/3 out, you can't get the mana from it because it has to attack.
Or you can in one time. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
But it does flip into a 3/3 that can maybe buff your team. At that point, the mana ability is not probably quite as exciting, but it still adds up. Yeah, I would give Lord of Ulvenwald a B-. I think it's just going to be an okay card.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little better than okay, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the Lord of Ulvenwald's nice. It's just hard to get there, because Kessig Naturalist is really just okay. But you definitely are going to play it in all the decks like that. Okay, so there are the signpost uncommons. Luis, we do have a decision to make about the double face cards because they're listed in their own category here. How should we approach that? Should we do them in their own separate bucket?
Yeah, we could just do all the double face cards for each color at the end of the color.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, so let's just start with white to keep this simple then. And our first card out is called Blessed Defiance. It is white for an instant. It's common. It says target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink until end of turn. When that creature dies this turn, you get a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying.
I like this a lot. This is a cool take on a combat trick where you're trading up most of the time because you're not getting any toughness. So you're getting 2 for 1, but you gain a bunch of life, like maybe a lot of life, because +2/+0 and lifelink is a lot. And then you end up with a 1/1 flyer. Pretty cute. It's like a C-, but I like the theme here.
Yeah, it reminds me of the combat trick from last set, the Make Your Mark or whatever it was called. The one that if your creature dies, it dies into a 3/2.
You got a 3/2?
Yeah. This one gives you a 1/1 flyer instead and tacks on lifelink. Not a huge fan of it. I'm sure it's okay, but to me this is like a D.
Yeah, D is probably fine on this.
Borrowed Time is next. It's an uncommon. It's 2 and a white for an enchantment. When Borrowed Time enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Borrowed Time leaves the battlefield. So there's your Oblivion Ring for the set.
Yep, these are basically always like bees. I think
they're super good. Yep,
solid card. They do have the drawback, when your opponent has bounce or enchantment removal, you can kind of get blown out, especially if you exiled an ETB, a card with an enters the battlefield ability. But nothing really wrong. B plus on borrowed time for me.
Yeah, basically what you give up in risk of the thing coming back, you gain in versatility on cards like borrowed time. It's an interesting name for it, though. It makes you kind of nervous they're going to destroy it. Candle Grove Witch is next. It's 1 and a white for a 2/2 human warlock at common. It has Coven. Again, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, it gets flying until end of turn.
I like that the Coven creatures always fill up one of the 3 slots, Mm-hmm. So this by itself is already getting you a third of the way there. I like it. It's a 2-mana 2/2 that at some point it's going to get flying, and usually by the time it gets flying, it's when you want it to have flying. You don't care necessarily that it's flying on turn 2, but you care on like turn 5 or 6. So
for sure,
I like C+ for Candle Grove Rich. I think this is just going to be a good solid 2-drop.
Same, particularly in aggressive decks, but in any deck that can run it's fine. Candle Trap is next. It's white for an enchantment aura. It's common. It enchants a creature. The creature has Defender and prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by enchanted creature. And it has Coven for 2 and a white. You can sacrifice it. Exile enchanted creature. Activate only if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers. So it basically neutralizes it completely, and then at some point, if you have Coven and 3 mana, you can really get rid of the thing.
So the biggest drawback on the 1 mana version, right before you've used the Coven ability, is that they can still block with it. Right. It doesn't deal damage, and it still even takes damage actually. But you put this on a 3/3, it can still just block your 2/2 every turn. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit more awkward in like an aggressive deck, which is funny because the aggressive decks are the ones most likely to have Coven. But that actually works out nicely because the control decks don't care about the Coven ability most of the time. Like you'll want to eventually do that if it's got a creature with a cool like activated or passive ability. But if you're playing aggressive decks, eventually you're going to be able to get it out of the way by using the Coven ability. If you're not, you kind of don't care. And Candle Trap just looks like a really efficient removal spell, especially for control decks. I like B on Candle Trap.
Yeah, I like B- on it, but I agree, especially for control decks, really good. Like you're going to not get beaten down for only 1 mana, and you're going to be able to kill the thing permanently at some point. Cathar Commando is next. It's 1 and a white for a 3/1 human soldier at common. It's got flash, and you can pay 1 and sacrifice it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Dang. Man, they push these things.
This card is definitely a beating. I mean, 3 mana or 2 mana 3/1 flash is already pretty good. And then it gets to blow up an enchantment artifact if you wanted to use it that way. I'm liking these 2-drops with utility in the late game and that have decent stats and all that.
Yeah, these cards are really Candle Grove Witch and Cathar Commando, very aggressive, and they scale well with the game. I like C+. I don't think I want to go to B-, but I like C+ for Cathar Commando.
Yeah, I like C+.
Like if you told me this was an uncommon, I would not be shocked. Cathar's Call is next. It actually is an uncommon. It's 2 and a white for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. The creature has vigilance, and at the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 white human creature token.
Ooh, you get some eggs into that basket. So, I mean, a 3 mana enchantment, not an aura, that just made a 1 on every turn would be unbelievably obnoxious to play against.
Yes,
and that this makes you take on a lot of risk to make it work. I suspect this card's not going to be that good. It's just you need to put this on a creature and have that creature never die not die for like 3 turns to really get good value. And if it does die, you kind of don't end up with all that much.
Yeah, and it is only on your end step that it triggers. I'm glad that it's end step because you're likely to get the 1 and then maybe sorcery speed removal can kill your creature. But yeah, I'm off it. I mean, I like the upside to this, but it doesn't alter the creature enough. Giving it just vigilance isn't enough to protect it from any of the things that would have killed it anyway. So Cathar's Call for me, yes, powerful upside, but in a world where removal exists, this card really does suffer.
Yeah, I'd give a D to Cathar's Call.
Same. What does Celestis Sanctifier do?
So it's 2 and a white for a 3/2 human cleric at common. And again, if it's neither day nor night, it becomes day when this enters the battlefield. And then when it switches from day to night or vice versa, Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 in your graveyard. So this doesn't draw you a card. You leave the other card on top, unfortunately.
Okay.
The main reason to play the Sanctifier is if you care about the night-day thing. If you want night and day to be flipping, again, because this sets you down that path. It's a minor ability, but it's also a 3-mana 3/2, which is fine. So this firmly lands in the C camp.
Okay. Yeah. C for Celestis Sanctifier. Clarion Cathars is next. It's 3 and a white for a 3/3 human knight at common. And when it enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 white human creature token.
Yeah, compare this to Cathar's Call. It's like you just kind of get all that up front and you don't have to worry about it otherwise. So yeah, Clarion Cathars is fine. It's gonna end up, being a good part of any aggressive deck and put some chump blockers into play if you're being a little more defensive. So I like this at C+, I think.
Same. It's also 2/3 of Coven on its own, which is good. You just need anything with 2 power and you're good to go.
Yep.
Let's see what's next. Dual Craft Trainer. That's 3 and a white for a human soldier at uncommon. It's a 3/3, so 4 mana 3/3, and it's got first strike, and it has Coven. Target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. Very aggressive.
A 4 mana 3/3 first strike is a pretty good amount of board presence. I would generally be happy playing that card. You don't see that many big first strikers these days. It's really hard to take down a 3/3 first strike in combat.
Yeah. There's not a lot of 4 toughness stuff before turn, say 5 or so.
And it works really well with pump spells. And then adding the Coven ability, this can, if the board stalls at all, this can sit and play and either give itself or another creature double strike and really let it send in for some good damage. So I like C+ for Dual Craft Trainer. I could see B-, but my guess is it's going to play a little closer to a C+.
I like C+ for Dual Craft Trainer. I think it's going to be a little tricky to keep Coven, as your opponent does have a say in it. They can aim their removal at either the payoff or the thing that breaks up Coven and force you to re-get it again. Flare of Faith is next. It's 1 and a white for an instant. It's common. It says target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it's a human, instead it gets +3/+3, gains indestructible as well. Dang.
All right. Yeah. Solid combat trick really in a deck with humans. +3/+3 indestructible is a pretty good bonus. If you're getting that like half the time, Flare of Faith is a card I would like to have in my deck. And it's nice because the humans tend to be a little bit on the like smaller to medium size. So +3/+3 is really nice on those. It's not like you're targeting a 5/5 or what have you. Mm-hmm. So I would give Flare of Faith a C, and just note that you want to have a decent amount of humans to make the card good.
I agree. I think we'll see this cast a lot over the course of the format. I mean, it makes any human win combat, basically.
Or dodge a removal spell.
Yeah, totally. I like that. Yeah, that card's that's a pushed combat trick. What about Gavany Dawnguard, I should say?
1 white for a 3/3 human soldier uncommon. It has Ward 1, so when your opponent targets this, they have to pay 1 or it counters it. And if it's neither day nor night, it becomes day when this enters the battlefield. And then it says whenever day becomes night or vice versa, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value 3 or less from among them and put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom. 3 mana 3/3 Ward 1 that has a potential card advantage ability, like that just keeps happening. Gavany Dawnguard is awesome. This card is very strong.
Yeah, this looks really good. This looks like a B+ to me.
Yeah, I like B+ on Gavany Dawnguard. It's a pretty big threat. Your opponent's going to have to deal with it, and it's got Ward 1, makes it a little harder, and then it's just not hard to get 2 to 3 cards out of this.
No, not at all. It's also a human, and it's going to go right into the deck that can dig up the things that it can search up, the 3 mana value or less cards. Yeah, that's great. B+ for Gavany Dawnguard. Gavany Silversmith is 3 and a white for a 2/3 human soldier at common. And when it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Dang.
Ooh, the Saddleback Lagak is back.
Yeah, it is. That's sweet.
Oh, this is a very good curve topper. You play this after playing like a 2 and a 3 drop. You just really you can get in there, and then it can target itself if it needs to. So it's a 3/4 that gets another counter. If it's only your second creature. So I like Gavany Silversmith at B-. Just a really, really solid card.
Yeah, I also feel like this could be a good Coven enabler, like the ability to throw counters around to kind of set it up so that you get Coven.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, so that's sweet. Wow, that's a really nice common. It's also a human. Yeah, I was really excited about this set, and I really wish we didn't start on white, because now I just feel like I'm going to get beaten down every single game because these cards look really good. Gavany Trapper is next. It's white for a 0/2 human soldier at common. You can pay 2 mana, tap it to tap target creature.
A solid tapper. The tappers that cost 1 mana to use tend to be very, very good. Tappers that cost 2 mana to use tend to be kind of in the medium range, and then 3 mana just you don't usually want to play those cards.
Yeah.
It's a little rough that this doesn't have stats. Like it doesn't really participate in combat. Where I think Gavany Trapper is going to land is it's probably the kind of card you want one of in a decent amount of your white decks, and you rarely want two and almost never want three of, because it's just the more you have, the more likely you'll have two in play, and they get a little bit unwieldy when you have a couple of these.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to note here, and it applies to other cards in the set as well, things you can do on a turn where you don't want to cast spells are pretty valuable in a day-bound, night-bound environment, because if you've got like a werewolf you want to flip, you want to make it go into night and it's day, well, that means you don't want to cast any spells on your turn. So what are you doing? You want to look for instants or activated abilities, and Gavany Trapper does help with that.
Oh, yeah, that's really true. One other note, it is 0 power, which isn't something that you see that often, and I guess that counts for one of your covens, right?
Oh, it totally does.
So that's kind of interesting, right? Like a 1-drop that's 1/3 of coven and really not one that you're going to hit on any other level. It just means you need a 2 and a 3 or a 2 and a 4 or 3 and a 4, and you've got it. So this probably could sneak in. Also, I give R&D credit for saying for these 1-drops, right? They have just been routinely playable. Not great, right? Think like, the Hawk from the last set, etc. They make it into the deck, but they're not great. I think this is going to be like that. I think this is going to play at a C or a C- level, but I think it will play.
Yeah, I like C for Gavany Trapper.
Okay. Hedgewitch's Mask is white for an artifact equipment. It is common, and the equipped creature gets +1/+1 and can't be blocked by creatures with power 4 or greater. And the equip cost, of course, this is the most important part, it's 2. It's affordable.
Yeah. This is okay.
Yeah.
I've never really been a fan of the can't be blocked by big creatures sort of effect. Like there's a scattering of cards throughout Magic history have done this, and it really doesn't end up playing all that well. It's not a big enough bonus. Like, yes, when you give a 3/3 +1/+1 with this, and now they can't block it with a 4/4. Like you got a 4/4 that they have to chump with. But they can also just double block it with a 3/3 and a 2/2, and it still doesn't work. So
right.
I would give Hedgewitch's Mask a D. Just doesn't look like a card you really want in your deck.
Looks like a D to me as well. Homestead Courage is next. It's white for a sorcery. It's common. It says put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and it gains vigilance until end of turn, and you can flash it back for just white.
So this is the kind of flashback card you really want to discard. You don't want to cast the first half because it's not that strong of an effect where, yeah, you can put this card in your deck with the intention of casting and flashing it back if your deck's aggressive, right? White to get 2 +1/+1 counters is not too bad. But where you'll get real value is if you mill or discard this, so you never have to interact with the first half, but you just get free value coming out of your graveyard.
For cheap.
Yeah, I would give Homestead Courage probably a C-. These cards tend to play a little bit better than they look, but it doesn't look that great.
Agreed. I agree. I do think that it will play slightly better. I'm with you, a C- for Homestead Courage. Loyal Griff is next. It's 2 and a white for a 2/2 Hippogriff. It's uncommon. It has flash and flying, so 3 mana 2/2 flying flash. And it says when it enters the battlefield, you may return another creature you control to its owner's hand. Not their stuff, your stuff.
Yes.
But it does have flash, so you can save your creature, you can chump block and blink it. If it's being targeted by removal, you can save it.
It's another nice card to pass the turn, flip your werewolves, and then just cast this on their turn.
That's right. You can re-trigger ETBs if you have the mana to just straight up recast a card again. And even just at the common level, we've seen some pretty desirable, Gavany Silversmith getting recast can have a big impact on the game, for example, and that's just a common. I'm not, we've been kind of mentioning our intuition experience tells us the cards like Homestead Courage play a little better than they look. And same thing with the 3/1 that we talked about before, the black-red one. These type of cards, Loyal Griff, play a little worse than they look, but I could definitely see this finding a home. I think the most important point is the one that you made about day-night. It allows you to use your mana and still, maintain the day-night that you want.
Well, also, you just don't need that much more on a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. to make it good. And this has multiple abilities, flash, and a pretty powerful ETB. So I like B for Loyal Griff. The card's going to play quite well.
I like B- for it. I think it's fine. Odric's Outrider, 3 and a white for a 2/4 human knight at uncommon. Whenever it or another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Dang.
This really strong ability here. When this is in play, if they kill any of your creatures, you're getting a +1/+1 counter out of the deal. That's really strong.
Even this guy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
This looks like a B to me.
Yeah, this doesn't care whether it's token or anything like that. So if you can make some tokens, you can get some really good value. A lot of the times, this is going to die first if your opponent has anything to say about it. But it's a 2/4. It's just not that easy to kill. So I like B for Odric's Outrider. And of course, just look to go wide. Look to play as many creatures as possible here.
Yeah, and as we said, if they do kill it, you still get the counter. So that's fine. Ritual Guardian is next. It's 2 and a white for a human soldier at common. It's a 3/2. And it has Coven. Ritual Guardian gains lifelink until end of turn. Nice. Fine.
C- level to me.
Yeah. D plus C- is where I'm at too.
Yeah. This reminds me, it reminds me a little bit of the Celesta Sanctifier, the 3/2 that makes it day or night, gives you like the weird scry ability. Mm-hmm. But that card has some pretty high upside where if you're a day-night deck, you just need cards like this. No deck needs Ritual Guardian. It's just a filler card. So I like C- D plus for that.
Filler is the perfect descriptor for it. Ritual of Hope is next. It's 1 and a white for an instant and uncommon. It says creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. It's an instant. So, okay. And then it has Coven. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn instead. 2 mana. If you have Coven, it's +2/+1 for all your things. Like that is a lot.
So what I really like about this card is the times when it'll be good is when it's going to be really good. You want to cast this when you have a lot of creatures in play, which makes it way more likely you have Coven going, at which point it's even better. So it's a little bit, feast or famine, where when it's bad, you're getting +1/+1 and you have 1 or 2 creatures in play. But when it's good, you have like 4 creatures in play and you're getting +2/+1 on all of them. So I'm glad this is uncommon. This looks like one of the early, grown test contender cards where you're like, wow, they're attacking me with 4 creatures. They've got to have Ritual of Hope. This really sucks, So I've
got a question.
Yeah.
Inspired Charge, 2 white instant +2/+1 for all your creatures.
Yeah.
How much does the fact that this is cheaper really matter?
I think it matters a lot. I think that Inspired Charge was always like kind of a mediocre card that had some like high points, right? When you got to line it up. Ritual of Hope, I think, keeps the high points, but at 2 mana means that you can play this and another card in the same turn, including, by the way, you've got 2 creatures in play. You play your third and attack with those 2. Now you have Coven because the creature you got to play. Plus, when you want just the +1/+1 ability, like to win a combat, the fact that you can use this on turn 3 to make it so your 2-drop beats theirs in combat if you've got nothing better to do, that's just all part of the range of the card.
Okay.
And opening up those possibilities, I think, is good. I'm not saying this card's nuts because Inspired Charge wasn't, and this card's not that much better. But I think Ritual of Hope has enough advantages over it that it's meaningfully better.
Okay, so, you just get a straight up mode that you didn't get on Inspired Charge, where you can just cast it for 2, like you said early in the game. That's great. I mean,
even 2 mana still matters on turn 6. Sometimes it matters that you cast this for 2 mana and still have 4 mana left. So I would give Ritual of Hope a B-. I'm not super high on the card or anything, but I do think it's going to have some really good high points.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially because of how aggressive white has been. I mean, it's going to want to take advantage of cards like this. Search Party Captain is next, 3 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier at common. It costs 1 less to cast for each creature you attacked with this turn, and when it enters a battlefield, you draw a card. Sweet.
Oh, you like this card?
I do.
So 4 mana 2/2 ETB draw card is a little below the curve these days. I got to admit that's a card we played back in like Kaladesh, and it was just okay. And things have progressed since then. Yeah. But this is really easy to cast for 3 mana, and sometimes you cast it for 2 or even 1 mana.
Oh, that's awesome! And you get the card back right away.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
I would give Search Party Captain I think a B-.
Yeah,
it's it's just going to be a really good card in a deck with a ton of creatures in it.
I agree. B- for Search Party Captain. That's sweet. Soul Guide Gryph is 4 and a white for a 3/4 Hippogriff Spirit. It's common. It's a flyer, so 5 mana 3/4 flyer. And when it enters the battlefield, you exile up to one target card from a graveyard. So that's relevant here, right? Like that seems like it matters.
It's going to eat a flashback card ideally, right? Or a disturb card. And it's a 5 mana 3/4 flyer, which has been a solidish slot in general. Yeah, this looks like a C plus to me. I think you'll be reasonably happy with this as one of your 5 drops.
Yeah, I was going to give it a C. Yeah. C for Soul Guide Gryph. Next is Sun Gold Barrage. It's 2 and a white for an instant. It's common. It says destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater. Sideboard?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a sideboard
card. These a lot of toughness.
These cards tend not to be castable as much as you want in like a random matchup. Like you play against blue-white with this, and it's just like, wow, this card's just dead. So it looks like a sideboard B. It's going to be good if they have a bunch of targets for it.
Yeah, that's where I'm at on it as well. Sunset Revelry is 1 and a white for a sorcery at uncommon. It says if an opponent has more life than you, you gain 4 life. If an opponent controls more creatures than you, create 2/1 white human creature tokens. And if an opponent has more cards in hand than you, draw a card.
So it's kind of like a timely reinforcements where if you can time it right, I mean, if you get all 3, 2 mana, gain 4, put 2/1s into play and draw a card is obviously just nuts. It has a little bit of a conflict with the second and third modes where if you want them to have more creatures, it means they probably played more cards than you.
Right.
Which means they have fewer cards in hand. You really want to get the second and third modes in conjunction. The first mode is fine. Obviously, it's all right. But really want to get the second and third if you can, which does push you to playing cheap cards and ideally cheap cards that don't put creatures into play. So that's a little tricky. I suspect this card's going to be good in any non-aggressive white deck. Just because if you're aggressive, 2 mana, gain 4, draw a card is not that good.
Right.
And that's the mode it's going to be most often. However, if you care about the life and you want creatures into play because you're behind on creatures, even if you don't get the card draw, in a control deck, 2 mana to make 2/1s and gain 4 is pretty good if they're beating you down.
Yeah, it's at least a turn that it gains you, if not multiple. Do you run this in every deck?
I would not run this in aggressive decks. I would run this in any non-aggressive deck.
Okay. What do you want to give it? This is a particularly difficult card to grade.
I think that, as long as you understand, this is what you got to listen to what we say here ideally, that you shouldn't put this in your like curve out aggro deck. It looks like a B- to me. It looks like a card that you're going to be pretty happy with. It takes a little bit of finagling to use correctly, but it can be really rewarding when you get there.
Next is Thraben Exorcism. It's 1 and a white for an instant at common. It says exile target spirit, creature with disturb, or enchantment.
So,
well, that's pretty narrow.
Yeah, when you're there are a decent amount of spirits in the set, but more in like in blue, I think, than anything else. So
you just can't main deck this, right?
This just looks like a sideboard card. There's not that many disturb cards, or even really that many spirits that you can main deck this. So yeah, looks like a sideboard B.
Okay, yeah, sideboard B. You'll know when you want it. Oh, Unruly Mob is back. 1 and a white for a human at common. It's a 1/1, and whenever another creature you control dies, you put a counter on it. +1/+1 counter on it.
Yeah, this is a solid card. It was never like super exciting, but it always kind of got the job done.
This card to me is like a classic C minus, but I like seeing it.
Yeah, if you have a lot of creatures in your deck, it can be decent.
Yeah, and then of course there's the black-white sacrifice deck, and an Unruly Mob could be quite good in that.
Yeah, black-white human sacrifice, nice little combination there, was one of the original Innistrad decks. It's kind of cool that has continued.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's look at the double-face cards for white. The first one is called Ambitious Farmhand, and it's 1 and a white for a 1/1 human peasant at uncommon. And when it enters a battlefield, you may search your library for a basic plains card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And then it has Coven. You can pay 1 white to transform it if you control 3 creatures with different powers, and it transforms into Seasoned Cathar, which is a 3/3 human knight with lifelink.
I love this card.
Dang, that's sweet.
A 2-mana 1/1 that goes and gets the third land, so you can flip it with Coven when you have enough creatures into a card that's pretty relevant on the board. I mean, that's the dream. It's a 2-mana 1/1 that draws a plains, which you would put in a lot of your decks. And then later in the game, sometimes, well, I got 3 creatures, I got 3 mana, now I got a 3/3 lifelink.
That's awesome. You can activate this anytime that you have Coven, right? So instant speed as long as you've got Coven.
Yeah. You can just activate this, and I would give Ambitious Farmhand a B. It just looks like a really good value card.
Definitely a B for Ambitious Farmhand. I love it. Next is Beloved Beggar. It's 1 and a white for a 0/4 human peasant at uncommon, and it has Disturb for 4 white. And again, that means you can cast it from your graveyard for the Disturb cost. It disturbs into Generous Soul, a 4/4 flying vigilance spirit. And if Generous Soul would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, you exile it instead, as is customary. So it's a 2-mana 0/4 that blocks for a while, and then after it eventually dies, you can pay 6 mana to make it a 4/4 flying vigilance.
Yeah, I love this for control decks.
Yeah.
It's a 2-mana 0/4, and like you would put a 6-mana 4/4 fly in your deck a decent amount of the time, but then you get a 2-mana 0/4 for free to start with, and then later when you want, you can flip this. It's also nice in the sacrifice decks because it's a good value card to sacrifice, and you will end up sometimes with your opponent just not killing this.
Yes.
You know, you play against blue-white flyers, you play against a deck that just has all 3 attack creatures, and it won't die. So having a backup plan for that is not bad. That's where the black-white deck comes into handy. But still, if you told me I was playing blue-white control, I would pretty heavily prioritize picking up Beloved Beggar. I like this one at B as well.
Yeah, same. I think the Farmhand's a little bit better, but same grade for them. Bereaved Survivor is 2 and a white for a 2/1 human peasant at uncommon. Whenever another creature you control dies, transform it. And it transforms into Dauntless Avenger, which is a 3/2 human soldier that says whenever it attacks, return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking.
I think this card's just okay. It's not the easiest to flip because your opponent's not just going to kill something else and let you flip this attack and bring that thing back. That's not really how it's going to work.
Right, they're going to kill this, yeah.
And a 3/2 that brings a mana value 2 creature attacking is actually, I think, in some ways worse because often you'll bring back a 2/2 attacking and they'll block that one with a 3/3 and then trade off for this with something else.
Mm-hmm. It's only got 2 toughness, so when it attacks, it's unlikely to survive more than 1 combat.
So I think this card is going to be desirable in black-white sacrifice, a deck that can like really flip it when you want and have things to bring back and kind of just control how the whole thing goes. I don't think it's going to be particularly great outside of that. Like you'll probably play this in like a red-white aggro. You probably won't play this in blue-white a lot of the time. So this looks like a C to me with like C+ range if you can really make it work.
Yeah, I like that too. C+ for Bereaved Survivor. Next is Chaplain of Alms. This is white for a 1/1 human cleric at uncommon. It's got first strike and ward 1. It also has Disturb for 3 and a white, and it becomes Chapel Shieldgeist, which is a 2/1 flying first striker that gives each creature you control ward 1. And if it would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead.
This is a good 1-drop. 1 mana 1/1 first strike. Ward 1 not really relevant on a 1/1 first strike all that much. Your opponent's just not going to spend too much time targeting it.
Right.
But 1 mana 1/1 first strike that comes back as a 4 mana 2/1 first strike that now gives everything ward.
With flying too, yeah.
I'm really loving the way these Disturb cards are going to play in black-white. But even without that, this card you would just put this in really any deck. Like if you're fully controlling, this isn't that impressive. But in any aggro deck, you're going to be really happy with it. If you're trying to get Coven going, it's a pretty good way to do that because this is just a good value card. I would give Chaplain of Alms a B.
I would give it a B-, but I like it too. Lunarch Veteran is next. It's white for a human cleric. This one's common. It's a 1/1. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. And it has Disturb for 1 and a white, where it becomes a 1/1 flyer. With whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, you gain a life, and then of course, if it were to die, it goes to the graveyard instead, or it goes to exile instead of the graveyard.
Yeah, I'm not super in on the Lunarch Veteran. Like this is now in the space of if I'm playing black-white and really want ways to sacrifice things, this becomes appealing. not a very good aggro card and not a very good control card outside of that.
Agreed. This one might be too low on the list, right? Like the stats might just not add up enough, even under even under good circumstances here.
I like Lunarch Veteran at probably like C-. It just doesn't look that impactful.
D+ is what I was going to say. I don't know. Is the life gain a thing? Maybe that's the difference.
I mean, a 1/1 that dies into a 1/1 flyer, like you do have to pay 2, but that's not that much mana. I'm actually in C- or C, actually.
Okay.
I mean, Doom Traveler was an okay card if you could enable it. And this is, this is comparable. Like you get the life gain stuff in exchange for paying a little bit more mana.
True. It also represents 2 sacrifice fodder, so that could matter. Okay, we'll go C on Lunarch Veteran. You're right. Morning Patrol. Cute naming there. It's 2 and a white for a 2/3 human soldier at common. It's got vigilance and disturb for 3 and a white. It disturbs into Morning Apparition, which is a 2/1 flying vigilance. And again, if it dies, it gets exiled.
Yeah, all the disturb cards have that.
Yeah, I don't want to have to keep reading that, but I do. It is there.
I would have stopped reading it many cards ago.
I know you would have, but we got to be clear with the audience here. Somebody's going to message us and go, "Wow, so you can just keep looping it and disturbing it." But anyway, 2/1 flying vigilance off of a 2/3 vigilance for 3. Sure, yeah, that seems solid to me.
Yeah, this is a C level card. Like I would give it a C, but it's a 3-mana 2/3 that dies into a flyer, and that's just a perfectly good bit of value. Neither side is that impressive, right? On some of the ones we're giving higher grades, it's when like, wow, getting the second side is really good or what have you. This is just like okay on both sides.
Right, which is what you would expect from a card.
Still a 2-for-1 though.
Yeah, still a good 2-for-1 though. You'll definitely play Morning Patrol. So C, probably trending towards C+ for Morning Patrol. Okay, let's move to blue. Our first card out is called Component Collector. It is 2 and a blue for a 1/4 homunculus. It's common. It says if it's neither day or night, it becomes day as it enters the battlefield, and whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you may tap or untap target non-land permanent.
This is very much in the realm of you have to care about day or night outside of this card to make it worth it. This card's not good by itself, so it's a C.
This looks like a D to me.
Yeah, it's a 1/4. It's a decentest blocker, but yeah, it's C-.
I'm gonna go D. 3 mana 1/4 kind of sucks.
But if they, if you end up flipping it and tap a creature on their turn, they can't attack with it. So you could always just pass the turn, not play a spell, and guaranteed tap down one of their creatures at the start of their turn, which means they can't attack or block with it.
Okay.
So I like C- on Component Collector.
Right, I'll go D+. You talked me up a little. Consider is next. It is blue for an instant. It's common. It says, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. Draw a card.
Fantastic for constructed. Obviously quite playable for limited. It's like a C+. I mean, this is a little bit like Opt in the Spells Matter. It was like M21 or whatever, where the fact that you get to put the card in your graveyard means every now and then this is going to be 1 mana draw 1.5/2 cards, right? You're going to mill a disturb or flashback card and just really feel like you're winning. And still card selection is good, especially when blue-red cares about playing spells. So I would give Consider a C+.
So if you play Consider and you see a flashback spell, you're more likely to bin it?
I would say in general. Okay. I mean, it depends on the flashback spell. If it's like if you're playing Just Guide, it's the 2 mana deal 2 gain 2. Maybe that's a good enough card to draw. Like, is the card better than the average card in your deck? A lot of the times that's not going to be the case because flashback spells are costed to, kind of make up for the fact that there's 2 versions of it, right? Right.
That's exactly right. But I wanted to bring that up because I think I've seen a lot of people kind of autopilot and say,
yeah, you don't always do it.
Yeah, because you have to consider the upside of just like, well, if I draw this, I get to cast it twice. Yes, it's tempting to say I get to cast it once and then get a card out of the deal. And sometimes that is the case. But there's sometimes where it's not automatic that you put the flashback or whatever it's called spell into the yard. So just like Louis said, the bar is this is better than the average card in your deck. I like C+ for Consider though. Yeah, it's just upside with no downside basically. Devious Cover Up is next. It's 2 blue for an instant at common. Counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard, and you may shuffle up to 4 cards from your graveyard into your library.
This card was solid in the Ravnica City of Guilds metagame. I'm not sure where this is going to land. We're going to need to see how the format plays out. I like that it's exiling, because if you counter a flashback or disturb creature with it, then they don't get the second go round. And then when you got to make the no win condition double devious cover up control deck, that was always a delight.
For sure. That part was really, really cool.
Plus, look at the story. She obviously killed this dude and now is making him into a scarecrow.
Oh god, that is morbid to say the least. But generally speaking, 4-mana counters are too slow. After having just covered white, I don't want to be anywhere near a devious cover up. The format or the matchup has to really lend itself to the long game being the most important thing and to not being really pressured early. In that case, devious cover up can be a thing. My guess is that we won't be main decking it in the format, but there'll be a lot of times when you do want to have it, have access to one in your sideboard.
Yeah, I think that this card is going to vary wildly. Most of the time, you shouldn't put this in your deck, but in some decks, it's going to be really good. And if the format breaks in such a way that those are good decks to draft, Devious Cover Up could actually be one of the stronger commons. It really did overperform in Ravnica. So I'm going to give it a tentative C, but really it could range anywhere from literally B- to a D.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to see how this is going to play out. But if there's not as much aggro in the format, this card is really, really powerful. It's good in a long game.
I'm giving it a D. I think that these type of cards start out as a D, and then when the conditions are very specific, then they get bumped up to higher grades.
All right. Well, in a month, you're going to be third picking this card.
Maybe. Do you think this format's that slow?
I'll
be super happy if you're right. I'll tell you that.
But it looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, it does look sweet. Dissipate is next. It's 1 blue for an instant. It's uncommon. It says counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard.
It's funny. These are kind of the same card.
They are.
Dissipate is going to be on its face certainly much better. The conditions that make Devious Cover Up good are kind of unique, but when you meet that conditions, that card is just amazing. Mm-hmm. Dissipate's just going to be a good card.
Yep.
I think there's going to be enough flashback and disturb stuff going on that you'll just be happy putting Dissipate in your deck. It's not a fantastic card, but it's a C.
I think so too. It's really annoying when you get a key flashback card dissipated. It's you feel kind of robbed. So C for Dissipate. Drown Yard Amalgam is next. It's 4 and a blue for a 3/6 zombie horror. It's common. And when it enters a battlefield, target player mills 3 cards. Oh, okay, now we're talking Innistrad business here. And you can pay 2 and a blue to have it can't be blocked this turn. Get in for 3 with it.
So Amalgam's interesting because there is the self-mill aspect, though it is target player. So how this is going to play out in the set is not quite clear. This set does not look like it's got as much of a self-mill theme as original Innistrad. It just doesn't look like you're getting paid off all that much for doing so. Mm-hmm. So I think the mill on this is not super relevant. Yes, sometimes you're gonna mill a flashback or disturb card. Sometimes you're gonna end up in a spot where milling them is good, though generally you're not gonna want to do that. But mostly you're gonna play this as a 5-mana 3/6 that can put them on an unassailable clock. I don't know. Between the really disturbing arm in the pick and the fact that it's pretty slow and doesn't do anything all that well, this doesn't look that good to me.
No, it's not great. This to me is a D+ type card. You might want to run one in certain decks, but I don't think it's going to be great or anything. 5 mana is just a lot. If you're on the self mill, you want to be doing that sooner. What do you want to give it?
C-.
Okay. Fading Hope is next. It's blue for an instant. It's uncommon. It says return target creature to its owner's hand. If its mana value is 3 or less, scry 1.
Interesting take on Unsummon. Getting to scry 1 is pretty nice. Good against tokens, of course. One thing to note with disturbed creatures is that when you bounce a disturbed creature, it just goes back to the hand and then can now be recast as its front side. So bounce is actually generally bad against disturbed creatures and good with them.
Right. How do you feel about bouncing double face cards werewolves and things?
Yeah, it could definitely be good, especially if they've committed to not doing anything for a turn in order to flip them. Plus we use context clues. This is an uncommon,
yes,
which indicates that it's got a little bit of strength to it. This is probably going to be a C+.
I think so too. I'm generally a little higher on these type of effects. And I think C+ for Fading Hope is probably, again, the uncommon factor is like, that stands out. Next is Falcon Abomination. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 flying zombie bird. At common, it says, when Falcon Abomination enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. It can't block, and when it attacks, sacrifice it at the end of combat.
Oh, man, Falcon Abomination is pretty pushed. I mean, you got a 2/2 flyer that makes a 2/2 token. Granted, you really got to wrap your mind around Decayed tokens. They are not that good compared to what you're used to. This is very far from 3 mana make a 2/2 with another 2/2. Because I would say, in general, a Decayed token is worse than a 1/1.
Yeah, I think so too.
It can't block, and then it dies when it attacks. Not that 1/1s tend to survive too much, but the not blocking part is pretty big. You get one attack in. So the main uses for Falcon Abomination are if you're playing a zombie deck where you're, this puts 2 zombies into play. Obviously, that's amazing. Or you have sacrifice stuff, which is a little less likely in blue. So, or you're just aggressive. You just want to attack them, and this does a pretty good job of attacking them because it's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer that probably just does an additional 2 damage to them once with that token.
Yep. And we talked about pairing this up with the Lord.
Yeah.
Pairing cards like this up with the Lord, like this is the ideal common for it.
I hate the picture though. That just giant-headed bird looks so.
It is. Did you see the flavor text?
Oh yeah, the foulest of foul. So yeah, Falcon Abomination looks like a C+, clearly good, and you can get it to like a B if you can really make use of the zombie token.
Definitely. So C+ trending towards B for Falcon Abomination. Next is Firmament Sage. It is 3 and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard at uncommon. If it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as it enters the battlefield, and whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you draw a card. Nice.
Yeah, solid. Does some stuff by itself. Obviously plays well if you have more night day stuff, or they do. So give a B to Firmament Sage. It's just going to be a big threat on the board.
What's the quickest I can get my card?
Well, you play this and it becomes day. I mean, the quickest you can get your card is if you play this and another spell when it's already night, and then it flips a day on their turn.
Okay.
So that's the quickest. This is the kind of card when your opponent casts this card, you're now under pressure.
Yep.
You just feel like if I don't kill this, they're going to start drawing cards off it one way or another. So I like to play those cards in my deck. They put your opponent under pressure. So I like B on Firmament Sage.
Same. B for Firmament Sage. Firmament Sage. Next is Flip the Switch. It's 2 and a blue for an instant. It's common. It says counter target spell unless its controller pays 4, and you get a 2/2 black zombie creature with Decayed.
They could get really aggressive on giving you Decayed tokens, which actually should indicate to you about how good they are.
Right.
You could never make a 3 mana 2/2 that makes a 2/2 at common and just expect it to be fine.
Right.
A 3 mana instant that counters a spell and makes a 2/2, just be outrageous. But a Decayed token is very different. I think Flip the Switch is solid. Again, you really want to be using the Decayed card, and one of the drawbacks here is a counterspell that makes a 2/2 is not that's only good in aggressive strategies or sacrifice strategies.
It's an inherently defensive card, making it an inherently offensive one.
Right. That's exactly what I was going for. So I like Flip the Switch at like a C- because it will have some pretty solid upside. But you really want to start looking at like, how am I getting more out of this Decayed token than just 2 damage? Because 3 mana instant counter spell, unless they pay 4, they take 2 damage. Just wouldn't be that exciting. And unless you're doing something with the token, that's kind of the high end of it. The low end is the token does nothing.
There's going to be a lot of spots where the token just sits there and can't attack, and obviously can't block. C- for Flip the Switch.
Yeah, I like C- on that.
I mean, it's still conditional counterspell, even though 4 is enough to get most things, especially flashback stuff. Geistwave is next. It's 1 and a blue for an instant at common. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If you controlled that permanent, draw a card.
I love this card.
That's kind of sweet.
It's a bounce spell that when you want it offensively just works, right? It bounces on non-land permanent. But if you use it defensively, you get an extra card out of the deal.
Yeah.
I think that's sweet. I like Geistwave a lot. I would give it a C. I don't think it's a card I'm like going nuts over, but I think this card is going to play really well. And I really like just like kind of this is a very elegant design. I like the design a lot.
I like it a lot too. Geistwave gets a C. Larder Zombie. This looks like me or you at midnight in front of the fridge. Blue for a 1/3 zombie. It's common. It has Defender. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard.
So
what? No.
Nah. Like A 1 minute 1/3 defender, not good because you can't even combo this with the Lord or what have you.
Yeah.
And then tapping 3 creatures to get us like a Surveil 1. I'm off Lord or Zombie. It'll be an F for me. I just don't think you're going to play this card.
I'll go D. I really want to like it. I really hope it. Like, again, these are the type of cards, like, if Larder Zombie is a thing in this format, then this format's going to be sweet, right? But under most conditions, that's not where you'd want to be. Locked in the Cemetery. 1 and a blue for an enchantment aura at common. It enchants a creature, and when it enters the battlefield, if there are 5 or more cards in your graveyard, you tap enchanted creature, and the enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. That just happens all the time. But if you have 5 cards in your yard, then you can proactively tap it and keep it that way.
So the main issue I have with this card is that the way those cemetery gates are designed, clearly this guy could just climb over it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like, you're not going to break this thick chain, but look at this. Looks like a pretty easy gate to climb. You know, they're not. It's not going to be 20 feet tall. It's going to be like 10 feet tall.
Yeah, this guy's really hamming it up. He's really like going for the Oscar here too with the sad eyes. Come on, dude. You can
really Hollywooding it. So really low grade on that. But
yeah,
the actual card is good. 2 mana, 2 mana aura that makes a creature not untap. Solid bit of removal. Blue gets to play cards like that, or tends to play cards like that in most decks. And then later in the game, it just locks it down immediately. So at the beginning of the game, you might have to take a hit off something. Sure. Late in the game, you won't even have to do that. So I would give Locked in the Cemetery a C+.
I like C+ as well. Yeah. It does play nicely early or late just because you're going to be getting beaten down. Nabelgast Intruder is 2 and a blue for a 2/1 flash flying spirit at uncommon. And when it enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-0 until the turn. That's pretty nice. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice little ambush here. And one of the cool things about this is you can attack with a creature, and then if they block, play this to win the combat, or you can just use this to ambush when you just pass with mana up and they attack into an empty board.
Right.
So really good at almost every point. In a 2/1 flyer, just a good thing to have in play. So I would give Nabelgast Intruder a B-. I think you're going to get a card out of this a pretty good percentage of the time.
I think so too. And your fail case of just casting it on their end step, it also gives you the day-night flexibility of having flash. Ominous Roost is next. It's 2 and a blue for an enchantment. It's uncommon. And when it enters the battlefield, or whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, you get a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying, and this creature can block only creatures with flying. Oh, that last sentence stings, man.
Well, I think that it's just a good move that a lot of the token generation in this set doesn't put a bunch of token blockers into play, because that's just tough to play against.
Yeah, it does come up the board a lot. Yeah.
What it lets you do is push the rates on all these things and let you make the card work more often and get more value from it, just because you're not going to get to use them in kind of the best way it is to use tokens. So that obviously weakens the card on the flip side. I like that this makes one immediately. You probably need to make 3 tokens total to feel like this card really, you got away with something. And that's not going to happen very quickly. I'm guessing this card doesn't end up being all that good. You'd have to have a lot of cheap flashback before this really pops off, which you might end up doing. But the fact that it's not defensive is such a huge blow, because when you played with Burning Vengeance, right? When you played with cards like that, you're losing board position because most flashback cards don't affect the board. They're like, draw a card, or, do this other effect that's not really putting things into play. And you're counting on this card to protect you. It just doesn't. That's not what this card does. So right. I'm thinking this is a build around C. I could definitely see some decks where it overperforms. I think most decks can't even play it. And even the ones that do, I don't know that it's going to be, a build around that's really integral to your deck's success.
I can't get behind this card. I would give it a build around D. I want to love it, but for the reasons you said, I can't. And I mean, flashing back stuff is inherently more expensive, right? And we're not just talking about flashback. It's what's it called too, for creatures.
Disturb as well. Yes.
Yeah, but still, it's if I have to spend 15 mana worth of disturb and flashback to get my extra couple of birds that can't even block ground creatures, I'm kind of off it. I mean, yeah, you could definitely win games with this or whatever, but I wouldn't be surprised if just a random 3-drop would outperform it regularly. Dang, that looked like a really cool build around, but that last line really kind of tore it up. It wouldn't be that great if it just made 1/1 flyers, right? Like, you can't just flashback stuff at will, right? You flashback a couple of cards per game.
The fact that it gives you one up front, probably makes it would make it pretty strong.
Okay. Next is Organ Hoarder. This is 3 and a blue for a 3/2 zombie at common. And when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard.
Nice.
4
mana 3/2 that lets you cast like strategic planning. This is sweet. Organ Hoarder. We'll be hoarding these, all right. This looks like a B to me. It's just a good card.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I already told you I'd play 4 mana 2/2 draw card.
I mean, 3/2 really affects the board.
This is actually much better, and it's a relevant creature type. I like B for Organ Hoarder. I am in. That is sweet. Next is Otherworldly Gaze. It is blue for an instant. It's common. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on top of your library in any order. And if that wasn't good enough, you can flash it back for 1 and a blue. Card seems real bad.
Oh, yeah. The only way I can really see justifying this is if you're like the turbo flashback deck that really is just getting paid off on Ominous Roosts and the like. That just doesn't seem all that likely. So this looks like an F to me.
It does to me too. I mean, you
don't
get
a card out of it.
Right. You just never get a card. And you could read this as blue, mill yourself for 3, flashback, 1 and a blue, mill yourself for 3 again, what was that card called? There was a card similar to that in original Innistrad that actually did see some play. So maybe there's some build around aspects to Otherworldly Gaze, but draft in and draft out, that's not where you want to be. What about Phantom Carriage?
This is a 4 blue for a 4/4 spirit at uncommon. It's a flyer. So 6 mana 4/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a card with flashback or disturb, put it in your graveyard, and then shuffle. So
nice.
6 mana 4/4 flyer that draws you a card. I mean, yeah. Again, these cards aren't the most efficient coming out of the graveyard, but it's still a card. Mm-hmm. So,
and you've already got 6 mana.
Yeah. So Phantom Carriage just looks awesome to me. It's not going to be hard to end up with a deck that has like a couple, disturb or flashback cards. In fact, it'll be hard not to. So
right. Exactly.
I'd be pretty happy putting Phantom Carriage in basically any deck at a B level.
I like it too. B for Phantom Carriage. Next is Revenge of the Drowned. It's 3 and a blue for an instant. It's common. It says target creature's owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. You create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. Yeah. Yet it's funny, ever since you said that, it's so clear that these creatures are just not important because they're tacking them onto otherwise, 1-for-1 style spells. So yeah, we know that the Decayed creatures aren't doing much.
Yeah, the good card though. 4 mana at instant speed, and I mean they get to choose whether it goes on the top or bottom, but it's still a 1-for-1. They're either skipping a draw step or the creature's just gone. So 4 mana instant speed to top of library, bottom of library, bounce, and then get a token out of it. Yeah, I'll always play this card. I would give it a C+.
Yeah, I like C for Revenge of the Drowned. I mean, you're still getting the thing for freebies. Secrets of the Key is next. It's blue for an instant. It's common. It says Investigate. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, investigate twice instead. And then Investigate, of course, is you make a colorless clue artifact token that has 2 sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. So it basically is stacking up cards. And then, as you might imagine, it does have flashback, and the flashback is 3 and a blue. So how much mana to get my 3 cards?
For a total of 11 mana, you get to draw 3 cards. But it's split up amongst a bunch of different costs. So it's pretty efficient because you play this turn 1 when you had nothing to play. So that's already knocking 1 off the cost. You don't crack the clue unless you don't have a 2-drop. Later, you flash it back and you crack the clues at your leisure. This card is fine. Like you're going to play this card a decent amount of the time.
This is like a case study in installment plans on your stuff. Something that you've mentioned a few times and that comes to mind here as well is the ability to generate value by spending mana that isn't spells, right? Like once you get the clues on the battlefield, you can, maybe do some day-night things, but still get cards coming into your hand, that type of thing. I mean, this doesn't look like a great card to me, but I think it's playable.
Yeah, it's.
Is it a C minus? Is it
looks
a D
like a
plus?
C minus.
I don't know.
If you can get a little bit of extra value by like having mill or discard or cards that care about flashing things back, then you'll get a little bit of extra mileage out of it. But overall, I think it's probably about a C minus.
Yeah, C minus for Secrets of the Key. Also, I just like it. I don't care if I have to overpay. Shipwreck Sifters is 1 and a blue for a 1/2 spirit at common. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, then discard a card. And whenever you discard a spirit card or a card with Disturb, put a +1/+1 counter on Shipwreck Sifters. It's funny because it's the 1/2 that I'm looking at the most, because I like the ETB effect. Draw a card, then discard a card in this format. It's going to be quite strong. You can get some value from it. It's also 2-drop, so you can help find lands and things like that. And then maybe you get a counter on it. But if you don't, it's a 1/2 for 2, which is pretty bad.
Yeah, you would need a fair amount of support before this gets there, because if you can make it as a 2/3, then it's obviously a playable card. But if it misses like 2/3 of the time, you're just not going to want this card in your deck.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I think you need to hit 2/3 of the time before, like 2/3 of the time, you need to be fairly confident you're discarding a card with Spirit or a card with Disturb.
Yeah, and it's also a little tough because if you have the ability to discard a Spirit or a card with Disturb, that doesn't mean that you necessarily want to do it every time either. So it's a little tough.
You also want other cards with discard, because this will keep pumping itself if you discard, but it only obviously gives you the one shot here.
Okay. Yeah, any type of looting effect.
This looks like a D to me.
It does to me too. Shipwreck Sifters gets a D. Scob Wrangler is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human wizard at uncommon. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control to tap target creature. That's mean.
Yeah, so it's a pretty steep cost, but also, again, you have to look at it. It's a 2-mana 2/1. So a 2-mana 2/1 that has upside in the late game is still pretty solid.
Also, hey, I finally found something to do with all these stupid 2/2 decay zombies that I couldn't attack with.
Yeah, it's really good with those. That's a good point. I would give Scob Wrangler a C. I actually think that you're going to be pretty happy playing this card.
Yeah, I like
and the
C+.
Reason is you just play this and it interacts early, and then that's fine. And then if you don't end up trading it off or you draw it later, having this on the board will annoy your opponent. You're going to end up in a spots where you'll be able to lock down a 4/4 flyer, or if they get too aggressive, you go tap end of turn and then try to kill them.
You sure it's not a B?
I'm pretty sure it's not a B. Yeah.
All right, we'll go C+ on Scob Wrangler.
C+ works.
Startle is next. It's 1 and a blue for an instant at common. Target creature gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed, and you draw a card.
Yeah. I mean, this is a lot of action in one thing.
It is.
2 mana for a -2/-0 and draw a card is a card I would consider playing in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And you get a free zombie on the house here. Startle looks very solid to me. I would give Startle a C.
Yeah, we had this card in the last set in AFR without the zombie, and it did see a little bit of play. But here we get zombie subtheme in blue-black, and then the blue-red spells. Usually spells that cost 1 or 2 and replace themselves for almost any effect are playable in those decks. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that one come in here too. You said C?
Yeah, I like C for Startle.
I do too. C for Startle. Stormrider Spirit. This is a reprint. 4 and a blue for a 3/3 flash flying spirit at common.
Yeah, medium here.
D.
Yeah, I like D for Stormrider Spirit.
Yeah, you can play it, but you're not super happy to. An Unblinking Observer. It's only got one eye too. 1 and a blue for a 2/1. You guessed it, Homunculus. It's common. It taps to add blue, but you can spend this mana only to pay a disturb cost or to cast an instant or sorcery spell.
I like this card. Again, it's a 2-mana 2/1 that has upside, and casting instants and sorceries is solid. Plus, you get disturb it kind of for free. I would play it even without that. I would give it Unblinking Observer a C as well. I just think that a 2-mana 2/1, even if you tap it for mana only once or twice in a game, is still going to be really good.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the flashback stuff is really important because it ends up being 5, 6, 7 mana to flashback cards that cost 2, 3, 4. Last blue card of the non-double face variety is Vivisection, which is also a reprint. It's 3 and a blue for a sorcery at uncommon. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, draw 3 cards. Interesting that this isn't, part of the white-black area of things that, you would think the sacrifice stuff would come in. But, we do get these stupid 2/2 Decayed tokens, and I'm really trying to look for reasons to use these that aren't attack once for 2 damage, and Vivisection seems like a good way to do that.
Yeah, you're going to be able to get a zombie for free enough of the time that this will just play as a harmonize, and that's quite good. Mm-hmm. So I like C+ for Vivisection. You do have to do a little work. You can't just have 0 ways to make tokens or 0 cheap creatures, but if you're able to meet that requirement, which it's not going to be hard to do, a lot of these, we're seeing 4 different good commons that make zombies kind of for free.
Yeah, 2/2 flyer, counterspell, the last one. Yeah.
Yeah, the startle and the bounce a creature thing. So yeah, I like C+ for Vivisection.
Same thing. And then the other thing to consider, of course, are the cards that you can, flashback from the graveyard, as it were, the creatures. Okay, we've got a few double face cards here for blue. The first one is called Bait Hook Angler. It's 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human peasant. At common, it has Disturb, and it disturbs into a 1/2 flyer.
For 2 mana.
For 1 and a blue, thank you.
Yeah. I would play this card. This is another card that's good to sacrifice. Gives you two creatures. I mean, a 1/2 flyer is not that exciting, but again, this is somehow the third 2 mana 2/1 like almost in a row with upside, and I'm just in for that. That's just a good card. So yeah. I like C for Bait Hook Angler.
I do too. The sacrifice stuff, trade it off for their aggressive stuff and then just have something later on. I like it. Covetous Castaway is next. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/3 human at uncommon. When it dies, you mill 3 cards, and it has Disturb for 3 blue, and it disturbs into a 3/4 flying, and it says it called Ghostly Castigator. And when that enters the battlefield, you may shuffle up to 3 target cards from your graveyard into your library.
Yeah, I like Covetous Castaway a lot because a 2 mana 1/3 that mills you for 3 is going to get you a card every now and then off other Disturb or flashback cards. And then a 5 mana 3/4 flyer that puts your 3 best cards in your graveyard back into your deck. Like that can matter. I mean, you will sometimes redraw those cards. So this looks like a C+ to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be higher. I think this might be like a B-. I mean,
I could buy that. It's
a 2 mana 1/3 that for 5 mana turns into a 3/4 flyer with all the little upside that we talked about. I like B- for Covetous Castaway. I think I would play that every time.
For sure.
Next card, never heard of it. Delver of Secrets. Blue mana 1/1. Human Wizard on the front side at uncommon here. And at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you can. If you reveal an instant or sorcery card this way, you transform it into a 3/2 flyer. This is a classic. This is an absolute icon.
It is. I was never that impressed with it in limited. I thought that you needed a lot of instants and sorceries, and even then waiting a turn or two to get your 3/2 flyer is just not that good. So I'd give Delver a D. For Delver.
A D for Delver. Yeah, it doesn't play well in limited, especially here at uncommon where you're not going to have enough to really build around it. Gale Drifter is next. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a Hippogriff. It's common. It's a 3/2 with flying, and it has Disturb for 4 and a blue, and it disturbs into a 2/2 flyer. That's it. This one actually gets smaller somehow.
Yeah, 4 mana, a Snapping Drake, 4 mana, 3/2 flyer that you can flash back as a 2/2 flyer. Disturb is good. It's Disturb's like flashback, and we like flashback, so it's not really a surprise that we're like pretty high on all the Disturb cards. This actually looks like a C+ to me.
It does to me too. I mean, these cards are just 2-for-1s, and they're incidental mill, and they're all the things that we talked about. So don't look at these and think, well, neither side of this is really good. It's like, well, you're getting 2 sides. it's 2 cards in 1. It's a 2-for-1. So Gale Drifter gets a C+. Next is Mysterious Tome. It's 2 and a blue for an artifact at uncommon. You can pay 2 mana, tap it, and draw a card, and then transform it. And it transforms into Chilling Chronicle, which is also an artifact that has 1 mana, tap it to tap target non-land permanent, and then transform it. Oh man, this is sweet.
This card looks awesome. This is such a cool story. So you play this, you draw a card, and then you can use this to tap something and flip it back. So you get to kind of alternate between tapping and drawing. But the cool thing is sometimes you'll really want the draw card and you just have to get through the tap to get back to it. But sometimes you really care about tapping something and you'll be going the other direction. So I think the card is strong. I think the card is a C+, and it looks like a lot of fun to play with.
It does. And it does stay tapped, right? I know some people get confused about transforming, but if it's tapped, it'll transform tapped. So you do have to wait. Overwhelmed Archivist is next. It's 2 and a blue for a 3/2 human wizard at uncommon. When Overwhelmed Archivist enters the battlefield, draw a card, then discard a card. So I like that already. 3 mana, 3/2, loot when it ETBs, and then it has Disturb for 3 and a blue, and it becomes a 2/1 flyer that says whenever, and it's called Archive Haunt, and whenever Archive Haunt attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. Dope.
Yeah, solid. 3 mana, 3/2 with a free loot, and then it comes back as a 2/1 flyer that loots every turn. This looks like a B- to me, actually.
Yeah, I think it's just a B. Like, that just seems like a good card. This is a good enabler, and I think a 3/2 will trade off, which is kind of what you want to do. Okay, that's it for the blue cards, which means we move to black. And our first black card is Arrogant Outlaw. It's 2 and a black for a 3/2 Vampire Noble at common. When Arrogant Outlaw enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So you attack with a bunch of things, get in for something, and then play this post-combat to drain them for an extra 2.
Yeah, this is kind of like a slightly harder to use Vampire Spawn, and Vampire Spawn did overperform. We were definitely too low on that initially.
Right.
This has better stats. I think a 3/2 in the aggro decks is generally better than a 2/3, but you're not always going to get the life loss, which does matter. I'm giving Arrogant Outlaw a C. I think these decks will be happy enough playing it. The other thing to note, these decks are going to be built around wanting them to lose life and playing like, just little dinky things that can do that or ways to get things through. So this card's kind of free roll on those, even though you wouldn't really contort yourself to make this card work. It will naturally work more because you care about that working.
Right. And then this is also a vampire, which is of note. Bat Whisperer is next. It's 3 and a black for a 4/2 vampire. It's common. And when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, you get a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying.
I like it. One thing that is going to be pretty cool with how these decks play out is if you're playing a deck that has like morbid stuff that cares about creatures dying, but you're also, you're playing black. If you attack your opponent with a 3/2 and they have a 3/2, if they don't block, it'll trigger your stuff like Bat Whisperer, Arrogant Outlaw, whatever. But if they do block, your morbid stuff's online. So you're kind of putting them in the squeeze.
Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of cool. What do you think about 4 mana 4/2 here?
Nah, I don't love 4 mana 4/2, but if you get a 1/1 token with it, it's very good. I would still say this is probably like a C, but there'll be if your deck's very good at enabling this, it'll be a C+.
Yeah, it is putting 5 power on the battlefield if you can get it going. Next is Blade Brand. 1 and a black for an instant at common. Target creature gains death touch until end of turn. Draw a card.
This card always plays fine. It's a C. It lets you trade up, lets you get extra spells on the stack. It does some cool stuff.
Yeah, and these are good for, when you have that same thing that you just described where you're like, I'm just going to attack with a bunch of stuff to try to, to make it so that you're, what do they used to call it? Bloodlust? Whatever. Bloodthirsted? Yeah. Right. When you deal damage to an opponent to get the benefits, and they're like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to eat up this little creature because you're just doing this to get the triggered ability, and you're like, Blade Branded? And they're like, oh no, I just traded for your stupid, like 2/2 guy or whatever. Yeah, C for Blade Brand. Next is Blood Pact. It's 2 and a black for an instant. It's common. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Instant speed.
Oh, solid. Like you're going to play this enough of the time when you're black. The fact that you can finish your opponent off is a nice little twist, but instant speed divination at the cost of 2 life is generally worth playing. I would give this a C. Yeah,
and like you said, in the really, really aggressive decks, you can play this to reload, or you can play it to kill your opponent, and it also does trigger like Bat Whisper or whatever if you get to a bunch of mana. C for Blood Pact. Blood Tithe Collector is 4 and a black for a 3/4 Vampire Noble at uncommon. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, each opponent discards a card.
I like this. A 3/4 flyer is pretty good, and sometimes you'll make them discard a card. And Blood Tithe Collector looks like a C+. It's just a solid card to put, to top out your curve, and gets a pretty good amount of value if you can hit them when the turn you play this.
Complements the theme perfectly. It's a vampire, and it's aggressive, and it's knocking cards out of their hand. I like C+ or maybe even B- for Blood Tithe Collector, depending on how your deck plays out. Crawl from the Cellar. This is black black sorcery at common. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target zombie you control. And it has flashback for 3 and a black.
I like this because I'm generally in for 1 mana return a creature with some upside, and the flashback is, to be clear, is the upside. But you can get a free +1/+1 counter if you have a zombie lying around. Ideally, you don't put it on a decayed token, but imagine putting this on one of your 2/2 flying zombie or what have you. Crawl from the Cellar looks strong. Looks like a C+ to me, actually.
Yeah, it's a 2-for-1 with fairly significant upside. I like it.
Yeah.
C+ for Crawl from the Cellar. Defenstrate. This is 2 and a black for an instant at common. Destroy target creature without flying.
Yeah. Defenestrate's really funny because that's just the term for throwing someone out a window.
Yeah, for killing somebody by throwing them from a window. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty sweet. It's also pretty good. Like, you can kill anything except a flyer for 3 mana. And yeah, I'm in for that at instant speed. Technically, Defenestrate doesn't have to kill them. It just means you threw them out the window. But in this case,
oh really? It just means throw out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought it was a
defenestration is the act of throwing someone or something out of a window.
Oh, that's funny. Destroy target creature without flying. Yeah, we'll play that all day, right?
This is a B. Like you're going to put this in your deck and be pretty happy with it.
That's great. Diregraph Horde is next. It's 4 and a black for a 3/4 zombie at common. When it enters the battlefield, create 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with Decayed. And when you do, exile up to 2 target cards from a graveyard.
So 5 mana 3/4 that makes 2 of these kind of like medium tokens, and you get to eat 2 things in a graveyard for additional value. This is definitely a zombie payoff where a zombie enabler where if you have payoffs, this card can be really good. It puts 3 zombies into play, and just a lot of power. This is the point where the tokens start to add up. Where if you've hit them with a couple decayed tokens, done some damage to them, and they're at like 10 when you play this. The 2/2 tokens do matter. Like they will just hit your opponent, even as just one shot take 2s. And obviously there's like a lot of upside, getting this back with Crawl from the Cellar. Like it doesn't take too many go rounds before they just fall under the horde of zombies. So I like C+ for Diregraph Horde, and I can honestly see B- too.
You're going to give Grave Titan a C+, huh? Okay. Yeah, well, I think it is
play
C+.
A little different than that.
I do think it is C+ though for Diregraph Horde. That is just a lot of material to work with. Even if it's not like the best stuff. Dreadhound. This card looks scary already. It's 4 black for a 6/6 demon dog at uncommon. When Dreadhound enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. Whenever a creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from a library, each opponent loses a life.
The art on this makes it look like a horse.
It looks exactly like a horse. It has a flowing mane. It has the kind of chest muscles. Yeah. All right. So they missed a little on that.
The card itself is pretty strong. A 6 mana 6/6. You get to stock your graveyard a little bit, and then anytime a creature dies or is put in a graveyard from a library, they lose a life. That's the Sir, what's his name from Thorn of Eldraine?
Conrad. Yeah.
Yeah. And that card was just, when it was in play, your opponent just always felt like they were losing.
Yeah.
So I think Dreadhound's going to be quite strong. This looks like a B.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably 6 mana 6/6. They lose a life just from casting it, and then nonsense will ensue for there. Yes, B for Dreadhound. Duress is back. Black mana sorcery. It's a common. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards that card. I don't think you could pay me to play Duress in a format like this. Like you Duress away their, like your only option ends up being like a flashback card and your life is just bad.
It's also just a card that misses way too often for comfort. It is a card that you can you can put in your sideboard and have it be pretty effective. But this is not a card you'd ever main deck. This is a sideboard C. It's not even that good after sideboard, but there are some matchups where you're playing against the spell deck, the blue-red spell deck. You should probably bring in a Duress. Yeah. Like you're just going to have a target often enough that it's going to be worth it.
Yep. What about Eaten Alive?
It says black for a sorcery at common. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sack a creature or pay 3 and a black. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Another great use of decayed tokens where for 1 mana you can get a creature. Also, At worst, this is just 5 mana exile target creature at sorcery speed, which is still fine. And you can sack a real creature to this if you really need to. Eating Alive looks awesome. This looks like a B to me, honestly.
Yeah, it does to me too. Flexible.
There's just so many ways to get free tokens here.
Yeah. Foul Play is next. It's 1 and a black for a sorcery at uncommon. Destroy target creature with power 2 or less and then investigate. So you get a clue token.
I like it.
Sure. Yeah, I play this all day.
2 for 1.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it's limited. You know, the power 2 or less is a weird one because sometimes you can hit like a flyer that costs 3 or 4 mana even, and it's still targetable. You know, it can get a little interesting if they have pump spells and such, but yeah, I'm in. I would play this.
What do you want to give it? Like a C plus?
I would give it a C plus. I would give it a C plus. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
2 for 1 for one of their worst cards or not a super important creature. Ghoulish Procession is next. It's 1 and a black for an enchantment and uncommon. Whenever one or more non-token creatures die, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed, and this ability only triggers once each turn.
This card is going to give you a lot of value if you have a bunch of ways to sacrifice things.
Yeah.
And the good thing about that is then that will also give you a reason to get these tokens. So it kind of the things that fuel this also make use of the tokens nicely. Of course, it's not making tokens off your tokens dying, but it's still. I think this card's probably not going to work out very often, but it will have some highlights. Looks like a build around C to me.
Yeah. I have a mediocre build around as well. It's just these Decayed tokens. They put so much pressure on you to have other ways to use them rather than just send them in. So I like build around C as well for Ghoulish Procession. Next is Hobbling Zombie. This is 2 and a black for a 2/2 zombie at common. It's got Death Touch. And when it dies, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed.
Yeah, I mean a 2/2 Death Touch for 3 that trades off and gets you a token. That's pretty strong. You get to you always get to trade off. I mean the Yuang Ti Fangblade from AFR was basically this. It basically never hit your opponent. So you get a free token on top of it. I would give Hobbling Zombie a C.
It looks like a C.
Happy to play the card in my deck.
Yeah, a good target for Eaten Alive, right? Like it's just some decks will find this really annoying.
And Sacrifice seem like they have a lot of support in the set, which is pretty cool.
Yep, totally. Infernal Grasp is next. It's 1 and a black for an instant. It's uncommon. It says destroy target creature, you lose 2 life. It's funny because, you know, it is tempting to like just dismiss the lose 2 life as not really being a big deal. And you shouldn't do that. It does actually matter, but you still are going to play Infernal Grasp when you can get it because that's just amazing. 2 mana instant to destroy anything. Yes.
Oh, yeah. This card's awesome. I mean, the main drawback in like Constructed is if you can't really play 4 of these or it starts adding up, but in Limited, you're going to get 1 of these and you're just going to be one of the best cards in your deck. I would give Infernal Grasp a B+.
Same, B+ for Infernal Grasp. Next is Morbid Opportunist. This is 2 and a black for a 1/3 human rogue at uncommon. Whenever 1 or more creatures die, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Interesting. It's just 1 or more other creatures. So that can be stupid zombies, right?
Yep. It doesn't care about tokens.
Yeah, I like that then. Then I'm sold because 3 mana 1/3 is not, stats that I want. And this is a human rogue, which is like, it's not a vampire and it's not a zombie. So, I'm a little less interested in it in black. But yeah, I mean, if I can play this and just attack with one of my Decayed things and just get a card back off of it straight away, I'm good to go then.
This is just another one of those cards that when it's in play, your opponent's just going to be like, if I can't kill this, things are going to go badly for me. It's not hard for Morbid Opportunist to do a real good job. So I like B for Morbid Opportunist. I think this card is going to be one of the better payoffs for making a bunch of tokens and eating them for things.
Yeah, I like that you can play it in your first main, and then if you have a Decayed token, get a card back basically right away. Or even if you just have a decent combat with some type of trades lined up, then you can do the same. Morcrit Behemoth is next. It is 4 and a black for a 7/6 zombie giant at common. Okay. It also has Menace. So we know that something's going wrong here. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or pay 1 and a black. So once again, wow. So yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to attack with a 2/2 Decayed zombie. I'm just going to be throwing them around to stuff like this. 7/6 Menace for 5? That's a beating.
Another great use of a Decayed token here.
Totally.
I like more Crypt Behemoth. I would give it a C plus and think as long as you've gotten a couple ways to make tokens, this card is just a card you should play in your deck.
Yeah, I mean, 7/6 is a 3-turn clock, and 6 toughness with Menace is enough so that most double blocks still won't kill it. So that's really good. What does Necrosynthesis do?
So Necrosynthesis is 1 in a black. It's an enchantment aura uncommon. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has whenever another creature dies, put a +1 counter on this creature. And then when this creature dies, look at the top X cards of your library or X its power, put 1 in your hand and the rest on the bottom in a random order. So assuming this lands, right, it resolves on the creature and doesn't get killed in response. When the creature dies, you get your card back because you get to look at the top 3 or 4 cards and put 1 in your hand. And then it also just has the upside of whenever another creature dies, this creature grows. I'm not really a believer in this because it's still vulnerable to, exile or bounce, of which we've seen multiple commons that do all those things. Mm-hmm. And then the passive, whenever another creature dies, this gets a +1/+1 counter is just not that strong.
No, it's really not. To me, the setup cost is too high for Necrosynthesis to make it, really good. To me, this is like a D.
Yeah, looks like a D to me.
No Way Out is next. It's 2 in a black for a sorcery at common. Target opponent discards 2 cards. You create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. They're just tacking that onto everything, like counterspell, discard, removal.
This is Mind Rot.
Yes,
Mind Rot, and you get a free token. I will say that Mind Rot's a little worse in a disturbed flashback environment. So
kind of a lot worse.
Yeah, you're still negating some of their cards, but the disturbed cards, especially the front side, sometimes not even the exciting one. So I think that No Way Out is going to end up being medium unless you really want the token. And in some matchups, it can be really good. When you play against like red, green, big stuff, and they don't have a lot of disturb or flashback, this card's just such a beating. So
it is, yeah.
I would give No Way Out a C-, but really keep an eye on the matchup. And there's some decks where you really want to board it in.
Yeah, I would start it at D myself because I would prefer not to play it, and then I would board it in when I thought it was appropriate. Novice Occultist is next. It's 1 in a black for a 1/2 human wizard at common. When Novice Occultist dies, you draw a card and lose a life.
This is another good thing to sacrifice to get tokens and or to put in your token deck, and just even as just a chump blocker, a 2 mana 1/2 chumps, you draw a card and lose a life, or even trades against their 2/1 or something could be pretty good.
Yeah, this is D+ range. Like, this isn't the type of card that you need to go seek out, but you could probably end up with one of these in your deck and be fine with it if you had those other synergies going.
I think it's like a C-.
Really? So,
like, if you're going to play a bunch of cards that like have sacrifice text on them, you would always play this, and that's going to happen in your black decks a decent amount of the time. Plus, like, if your opponent plays a 2/1 and you play this, like, you just dunked on them.
I think in black-white, I would go there, but like, I don't think in black-red that's necessarily the case.
No, this is not aggressive enough to be in black-red, but I think black-white and black-blue and black-green, you're going to be happy. So it's 3 of the 4.
Okay. So there you go. That's Novice Occultist. Next is Olivia's Midnight Ambush. This is 1 in a black for an instant at common. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. If it's night, that creature gets -13/-13 until end of turn instead. Hello.
Really cool. And one of the advantages of them doing Night Day the way they did, which is not by card, but globally, you can print cards like this. Super good flavor. Also a great card. 2 mana for a -2/-2 is just a card I'm putting in my deck.
Yeah.
And it's going to be night, some percentage of the time in the mid game that then this card's just going to be a straight up kill spell then. Looks like a B to me, honestly.
Yeah, it does. Because remember, given the stats reduction here, you can also combine it with combat to kill a bigger creature. It doesn't only kill 2 toughness creatures. So that's another thing. And then, as you said, it's effectively unconditional instant speed removal for 2 if it's night, which is absurd. So yeah, B- for Olivia's Midnight Ambush. Next is Rotten Reunion. Black for an instant at common. Exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed, and you can flash it back for 1 in a black.
So the old American Gothic here.
It is, yeah. So is this a sideboard card against a
this looks
heavy...
like a sideboard card if they're really relying on the graveyard? Because 1 black to make 2 zombies is okay, but one thing that's really critical here is that you really just need to be using those zombies. There's going to be decks that will play this main, because one thing is it's up to one card target, so you can cast this turn 1.
You could instant speed get yourself a 2/2.
Yeah, I mean, if you lead on turn 1, turn 2, then you got 2 tokens that just sit there because you don't want to attack and have them go away. So like it's not it's not as brutal as it might look. I think if I would probably sideboard this or put it in my deck if I really was going hard on the zombie theme.
Okay. Yeah. I like starting it out as a sideboard card, and it looks like a sideboard C to me, but there are reasons that I could put this in my main deck, like you said. Siege Zombie is next. It's 1 and a black for a 2/2 zombie. It's common. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Each opponent loses 1 life. Oh yeah. Another
kind of card in this vein where you got a 2-mana 2/2 zombie, which is not being a zombie's upside, by the way. It's definitely better to have that. And then when you tap 3 untapped creatures and they lose a life, like if you just board stall, this just picks away at them. So
right.
I think that Siege Zombie is going to end up being a C. You're just going to put this in your deck. It's fairly strong.
Yeah, I like any of these payoffs for having the 2/2 decayed zombies around. So C for that one. Stromkirk Blood Thief is next. It's 2 and a black for a 2/2 vampire rogue at uncommon. At the beginning of your end step, if an opponent lost life this turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on target vampire you control,
including itself. This is not other vampire. A very strong incentive to get damage through. Oh, one thing I also just realized, decayed tokens are pretty good at getting damage through. Because you get to attack with a 2/2 and your opponent's just not going to want to trade with it.
Oh, yeah. But once they have 3 toughness, then they evaporate.
But I think decayed tokens are a decent support for this. But yeah, I like the Blood Thief. It's not really a build around because all it asks is that you be aggressive. And, the last black comment on before we get to the double face card is going to help with that. But I would give Stromkirk Blood Thief a C+. I want to
go a little higher on it. I think that it's a pretty simple curve out, right? To just hit them with your 2-drop, play the Blood Thief on 3, get a counter on it right away, and then it snowballs from there. You also can just leave it back, never put a counter on it, and just have it be another one of those lightning rod cards like you've been talking about, where it's like, kill this or you're going to die, like as long as you're taking any damage at all. Because again, you attack with your 2/2, right? You play a 2/2 on turn 2. You say go. They don't have a good block for it. You attack with it, play this, put the counter on the 2/2. They're not going to have a good block for that card, right? It will just keep attacking them, and it'll keep getting bigger. And again, it has to be a vampire, so there's some things here, but that's the type of curve out that's really not asking that much of you.
Yeah, I can see a B- on the Blood Thief.
Yeah,
it's going to be the kind of card that when it's working, it's incredible, but some games it will not work.
Yeah, and it is only 2 toughness. As lightning rods go, it's about as easy to kill as they get. Last card, the one that you just mentioned, is Vampire Interloper. Very aggressive card. It's 1 and a black for a 2/1 flying vampire scout. Now, it has a downside. It can't block, but my God, if you want to get in, this is like a really scary card. It gets in for 6 damage like every game you played on turn 2.
If you have Vampire Interloper into Blood Thief, the game's just over.
GG. Yeah, that's game. That said, it is not good in all circumstances, blah, blah, blah. You have to make sure that you kind of cover your bases, but, it's a C or a C plus. Oh, I don't have it that high.
It's so good. The black red decks that had like 2 interlopers were so hard to beat. You just play this on turn 2 and your opponent would die.
It's true. They do get in for a lot of damage, and they
B-
really
has an asterisk. If you're not aggressive, this card shouldn't be in your deck.
Okay.
But in the aggressive decks, there's just basically no better common except for like the top removal spell.
Okay.
Like I would probably take this over Eaten Alive if I was playing black red aggro. I'd still probably take Olivia's Midnight Hunt over it. But even then, I'm not sure. With the new, with the Bloodthirst kind of theme, this might just be the best black common for an aggro deck.
Okay. All right. I'm with you then. Aggro deck, B- for Vampire Interloper. Otherwise, it goes down a little bit from there. Double face black cards. First one's called Baneblade Scoundrel. It's 3 and a black for a 4/3 human rogue werewolf at uncommon. Whenever it becomes blocked, each creature blocking it gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and it has
Swanking.
and it has Daybound. And again, that's if a player casts no spells during their turn, it becomes night next turn. And it transforms into Baneclaw Marauder, which is a 5/4 that has that same thing. Whenever any creature that blocks it gets -1/-1 until end of turn. And when this thing dies, when a creature blocking Baneblade Marauder dies, that creature's controller loses a life. And then, of course, it has Nightbound. Wow.
This card's good.
That's a beating.
Flanking, right? The ability of when this blocks, or when something blocks this, it gets -1/-1, makes this really hard to take down.
It really does.
You need a 4 power creature to trade with it, and double blocking is a disaster. Like you really don't want to do that.
Yeah,
and then if you ever flip it, it becomes a 5-part. Is this actually our first Daybound Nightbound card?
Yeah.
So I want to chat a little bit about Daybound and Nightbound. So one cool thing, again, we talked about this earlier, but you have the full control over this. You know, if you want to play no spells and flip it, it means that if you really want the backside of this, you just get to have that. And a 5/4 that gives -1/-1, and then they lose a life whenever something dies. That's not a huge upgrade, right? Baneclaw Marauder is like just about as good on each side. It gets +1/+1, sure. But there's going to be some cards that are huge upgrades when they flip, and the ways to make them flip, there's a couple ways. One is have a lot of these cards in your deck and then just wait till you have like 2 in play and then you pass the turn and you flip both. So you get a lot of value. The other is what I mentioned before, which is have a bunch of instants or activated abilities so that you can pass on your turn, then on their turn cast your 5 mana 3/3 flyer. You've already flipped your werewolf and then you get to kind of proceed from there.
Mm-hmm. This thing with its flanking, as you called it, it really gets around the problem with cards like this where they have 3 toughness and they just block with their 3/2 and you're like, well, I traded down somehow with my sweet uncommon. That's just not going to happen here.
Yeah.
Card's dope.
Yeah, I would give Baneblade Scoundrel probably a B-.
Yeah, I like B- for Baneblade Scoundrel. Next is Covert Cutpurse. This is 2 and a black for a 2/1 human rogue. This one's also uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature that you don't control that was dealt damage this turn. Nice. And this one actually has Disturb for 4 and a black, so you can cast it from your yard, where it becomes Covetous Geist, which is a 2/2 flying Death Touch Spirit Rogue. And that's freaking awesome.
Yep. Even if you don't get the full value on the front side, turning into a 2/2 flying Death Touch is awesome. It can block still. It can just trade for anything, and it's a 2/2 flyer.
Yep.
Plus, Covert Cutpurse works perfectly in the Bloodthirst decks. You're going to attack them. They're going to block. Like you attack them with a 1/1, they're going to block with their 3/3, and then you're going to Cutpurse them.
Yeah, they just have to, right?
Yep. So I like B- on Cutpurse. This looks really good.
Yeah, same. B- on Covert.
I will say that the ETB kill a wounded creature thing is historically tricky to get to work. I think that the Bloodthirst goes a long way, but don't assume this is going to kill something like 70% of the time. It's going to kill something like 30-40% of the time, because you should just want to get this card into play. Like, don't play nothing on turn 3 to try to get value off this later.
Yeah, unless you have no other answer. Next is Ecstatic Awakener. It's black for a 1/1 human wizard at common. You can pay 2 and a black and sacrifice another creature to draw a card and then transform it. You can only do this once per turn. It transforms into Awoken Demon, which is a 4/4 demon. So you pay 1 mana, then you pay 3 mana later and sacrifice another creature, but you get a card off of it, and then this thing becomes a 4/4. Nice.
I love this. This is a really good way to use a decay token.
Yeah, it really is. It's also just a single black mana to get it on the battlefield and kind of get things rolling. Jeez. Yeah, I mean, there's a curve out here where you play this on 1, play anything on 2, and then turn 3 you're bashing them for 4, and you got the card back off the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I like C+ for the Awakener.
Yeah, C+ for Ecstatic Awakener. That's really strong for a common. Next is Heirloom Mirror. It's 1 and a black for an artifact at uncommon. You can pay 1 mana, tap it, and pay a life. Wow, and discard a card to draw a card, mill a card, then put a ritual counter on Heirloom Mirror. Then if it has 3 or more ritual counters on it, remove them and transform it. You can only activate this as a sorcery, by the way. It becomes Inherited Fiend, which is a 4/4 flying demon, which you can also pay 2 and a black and exile a creature card from a graveyard to put a +1/+1 counter on it.
I love the art on this. Look at the front side.
Oh God, that's creepy.
So
I just saw
cool.
the demon. Ugh.
Yeah.
No, I don't like that.
This card is interesting. So you loot 3 times and lose 3 life. The life does add up. You get to mill for 3, which is actually kind of nice. And then you get on the 3rd, you get a 4/4 flyer. So you spent
with upside
5 mana, and it did take 3 turns because it taps. And you get a 4/4 flyer that, yes, it does grow. Yeah, I like this card. It's not the fastest, but this is going to be the kind of card if your opponent goes like turn 2, play anything, turn 3, play this, activate it, next turn, play a 3-drop, activate it, and then they're there on turn 4 or turn 5. Yeah, this card's good. There's going to be some games where you top deck it and it's bad, but honestly, getting to loot 3 times also just means you'll find other stuff to do as well. So I like B for Heirloom Mirror. It's not the best aggressive card, but it's a very strong card overall.
I think so too. Yeah, you're rummaging, right? You discard a card, then draw a card, so it's not quite as good as looting, but you're card neutral on that part, and then by the time it becomes a 4/4 flyer, you're looking pretty good. Weird card, but cool. Speak my name thrice and be rewarded, it says. So that's what's going on there. Shady Traveler. 2 and a black for a 2/3 human werewolf at common. It's got Menace and Daybound. And if you transform it, it becomes Stalking Predator, which is a 4/4 werewolf with Menace and Nightbound.
Yeah, solid. Not a card I'm going to go out of my way to like pick up, but I'd put it in most decks, I think. 3 mana, 2/3 Menace is decent. And then if you flip it into a 4/4 Menace, obviously that's great. So it just looks like the epitome of a C.
Yep, looks like a super solid transformed C. Last black card is Vengeful Strangler. This is 1 and a black for a 2/1 human rogue at uncommon. It can't block, and when it dies, return it to the battlefield transformed under your control, attached to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. If that wasn't weird, it's called Strangling Grasp, and it's an aura that enchants a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. And at the beginning of your upkeep, enchanted permanent's controller sacrifices a non-land permanent and loses a life.
So
they can just sack that thing.
They can just sack that, but of course, then you ended up with a 2 mana 2/1 that when it died killed a creature.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty good, and they also lose a life no matter what.
I don't think I like this very much.
Oh, I think this card is quite strong. You do need a way to sacrifice.
It can't block, right? I mean, that's what I'm worried about, is that you have to do all this setup, and what do you get? You get to kill a thing at some point?
Well, I mean, some point, like right away. Like
at the beginning of your upkeep, who am I? I control this, right? So
yeah, so you put this on their 3/3, they get to attack you with it maybe one more time. And then on your upkeep, what are they? They're just going to sack it. Like
they're
obviously
sacking it. Yeah.
Something else is pretty bad.
Well,
it is bad
but
against.
They also don't have
tokens.
to, right?
Yeah, it is bad against them if they have a bunch of decayed tokens.
Or just if you put it on a really great creature and they're like, yeah, I can just sacrifice my stuff and kill you with this in the meantime. Like, this isn't even removal. You know what I mean? Like, in the sense of like,
yeah, but it's a 2 mana 2/1 that even though it can't block, like you should be able to get value out of the 2/1. So I think the key with this is if you put this in a deck with sacrifice cards, it's going to be very good.
Okay.
Or if you're aggressive, because imagine you're playing black-red aggro. If you attack them with this on turn 4, what are they going to do? Like they're going to take it? Okay, yeah. And then you play your Bloodthirst card.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
So I think this card is solid. I think it's like probably going to end up being about a C+ in the decks that can use it, but just don't put this in your control decks. Don't put this in a deck that can't utilize it well.
It's funny. I almost see it like you said solid, and I would use that would be like the last word I would use to describe it. Like, this to me is very fragile, but has a nice upside. Like if you can combine it with some other card that works with it, like a sacrifice outlet or something along those lines, then I'm kind of in on it, but it's like very precarious at all stages. I like it less than you do.
I think there's just a lot of upside.
I like the upside that you see, but I don't see it as quite as high as you do, and I'm worried about the times when I can't get that upside. I'm just
looking at how much it looks like there is support for black sacrifice decks.
Mm-hmm. And there does seem to be quite a bit, yeah.
I mean, if you play this on turn 3 and then sack it to, kill their 3-drop and then just put the aura on their 2-drop, like that, you got to kill both their creatures. It's not that bad, So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I would say if you play it on turn 2 and your opponent is on the play and they play a 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop curve and your guy can't block and they're like, sure, take 2, I don't care. And, you don't have your sack outlet or whatever. It's like this stuff isn't free. It's clunky,
If your opponent curves 1, 2, 3 on the play and you don't have a 2-drop, yes, you are going to be in trouble.
This is a 2-drop though. Like this is taking that spot, right?
So, yeah, but I wouldn't look at it as something that's defensive. So.
Well, that's my point, is that it's not defensive, and that makes it a lot worse, right? Like sometimes you want to block.
Yeah, it's got a drawback. I just think the card has a lot of power to it.
Okay, I do too. I agree with you about the upside, but I don't want to give it a grade based on upside. I want to give it a grade based on, its upside, but taking in its downside.
On its downside?
Well. Yeah. No, both. I want to average it out, right? So to me, this looks like a C+. You want to go in the B range, I'm assuming?
No, I want a C+ on this.
Okay, cool. Then all of that was the classic grading thing of we actually were the same. Okay, so that's red, or that moves us to red.
Yep.
And our first red card is Abandon the Post. This is 1 and a red for a sorcery at common. Up to 2 target creatures can't block this turn, and you can flash it back for 3 and a red. Oh, man.
This is the kind of card where if you're just like complete balls to the wall aggro, and you cast this and get 4 damage through or 5 damage through, your opponent's going to be like, well, next turn I'm going to lose because you're going to flash it back. So it's actually, this is kind of the sort of thing. They had this in original Innistrad. It was like Raven's Cry or something.
Yep.
Or I don't remember what it was, but I think it was just the same card.
I think it was the exact same card. Yeah. And it did actually see a little bit of play.
Clutches of the Nightbird or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right. Nightbird's Clutches?
Yeah, all right, we're getting there eventually.
I'm going with Nightbird's Clutches. Final answer.
I mean, it's not a great card because it's pretty situational.
Yeah.
But these cards tend to be good when they're good, and Flashback is actually pretty strong on this kind of card.
It really is, yeah.
So I would still give it a C-, but just be aware that like having one of these in your aggro deck can work out nicely.
Yeah, to me, this is a classic D. Like you don't normally want these, but they do make it sometimes.
It's the best kind of D. Where when it's good, it just is a great card.
It really is. Yeah. When it's good, it's really, really good. Ardent Elementalist is 3 and a red for a 2/1 human shaman at common. When Ardent Elementalist enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. 4 mana 2/1 that buys back an instant or sorcery. That's not the worst.
No, this is a really good rate.
Mm-hmm. Two power to trade off.
We usually pay 5 mana for this effect. And like you don't care about the size. Like 5 mana for a 2/2 that did this was solid for a while. Like, I get the cards have gotten better, but I like this a lot at 4 mana. I would give this a B-.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to go C+, but you're right. I mean, we would pay 5 for this, no problem.
Kills your thing and then plays this and gets the kill spell back. Oof.
Yeah, that is rough. All right, C+, B- for Ardent Elementalist, and obviously goes really well in the blue-red deck. That's where it's going to be at home. Brimstone Vandal is 2 and a red for a 2/3 devil at common. It's got menace. And if it's neither day or night, it becomes day as it enters the battlefield. And whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, Brimstone Vandal deals 1 damage to each opponent.
This is another just enabler for night day, not really a reward. So it's like a D+. No, it's got menace actually. It's like a C.
Okay.
Not because menace plus the ping effect does add up, if you're being aggressive. Plus menace in the Bloodthirst style decks is really good. So you can, like, if you play this turn 3, on turn 4, you're getting the bat from the 4/2, right? Right. So I like this. I like this well enough. I would give Brimstone Vandal a C. I think it's going to work out pretty nicely.
Okay. I like that grade. What is next? Here it is. Burn the Accursed. It's 4 and a red for an instant. It's common. Burn the Accursed deals 5 damage to target creature and 2 damage to that creature's controller. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Nice. They push this one.
Yeah, I was just about to say that for 5, we're used to giving the 5 mana deal 5 like a C to C+, but mostly a C. This is like C+, almost B-. Getting 2 damage out of it is good, and exiling against disturbed cards also good. So I would give this a B- actually.
Yeah.
Killing their creature, nugging them for 2 and exiling, that's just a good combination.
It is. Yeah, that's going to get you, half a card worth of value plus just, a ton of damage coming across to the opponent. Yeah, these are normally C-. This one's B- for Burn the Accursed. Next is Cathartic Pyre. It's 1 and a red for an instant. It's uncommon. Choose one. Cathartic Pyre deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Okay, I'm in on that. You also can discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. Yeah, I mean, so we're just going to be killing things most of the time with it.
I mean, clearly you're going to cast the first mode in limited 90% of the time.
Yeah.
But having the second mode is free. Like you're getting it absolutely free. This isn't like, some of these cards, you're getting, you get flashback, but the card's a little more expensive. No, this is straight up free.
Yep, totally.
So having free is nice, It
is. That said, Cathartic Pyre looks like a B to me.
Yeah, I would give it a B. The 2 mana deal 3 is almost always a B.
Right. It's just like an instant speed B, and then you get this nice upside. Electric Revelation is 2 and a red for an instant. It's common. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, and then you draw 2 cards, and then it has flashback for 3 and a red.
So it's,
I can be up a card by the end of all of this.
Tormenting Voice, all that stuff. Well, there's a couple things that are nice. One is obviously it's got flashback, so you are up a card because when you flash it back, you discard a card, draw 2, but you didn't actually cast this card, like spend a card on this. The other is that in a set with Disturb and flashback, discarding a card is just a slightly less of a cost. Like I'm with you. If you're discarding a flashback card to this, it's not like you drew an extra card fully, but it is still a little bit of extra value. So
it can be, yeah.
I would give Electric Revelation a C-. It still looks a little clunky to me.
I still just think it's a D. 3. This is a lot of mana to spend if somebody's beating you down to be fiddling around with trying to filter your cards. I mean, this looks like a blue-red card, right? Like that's kind of the deck that we've seen that might want this the most. But I would give it a D. I don't think you're going to just be like slamming this in your deck regularly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways to make use of this, but yeah, without madness or anything going on,
right? It's just not that good of a card. I mean, you're up 1 card after 7 mana. Like you need to be doing so much to make that worth it.
I will agree to D+.
All right. Falconwrath Perforator is next. It's 1 and a red for a 2/1 vampire at common. Whenever Falconwrath Perforator attacks, it deals 1 damage to defending player. Hey, you wanted that bloodthirst? Here you go.
Yeah, I mean, it does the trick, right? Like it's gonna guarantee that you get the damage through, and it's a 2 mana 2/1. So the way this is going to work, I think, is when you play it turn 2, obviously if they have nothing, you're going to whack them for 3. Great. Often you're not going to want to trade because you're going to want to keep this one in the pocket for when the turn you do want to play your 3/4 flyer for 5 or whatever.
Yep, totally.
The downside, though, is if you wait too long, maybe this just dies when it attacks. But honestly, I bet like a third of the time you'll attack with this, have it die, and be happy with that outcome.
And be fine with it. Yeah, like it gets in once for 3, and then it sits there for 3 more turns, and then it gets that 1 extra ping, but that's an important thing. Yeah, I would give a C to Falconwrath Perforator. What do you think?
I like C, but I think it could be C+ in the right deck.
Okay. Famished Foragers is next. It's 3 and a red for a 4/3 vampire at common. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, you add 3 mana to your mana pool, and you can pay 2 and a red and discard a card to draw a card.
So you end up, if they lost life, this card's amazing. It's a 1 mana 4/3.
Yeah, and these type of decks can actually use this, right? Where you go this, and then you play a 3-drop, and you're like, go, and it's like, oh my god.
Well, the other thing that's cool about this is often with this kind of card, you don't have something, that you can spend the mana on. This guarantees you have something at least to spend mana on.
Yeah, you can save up your extra cards in hand and discard 1 to it right away. Yeah, I mean, what was the card that was similar to this a couple of sets ago? I can't remember what the conditions were, but it gave you 2 of the 3 mana back for casting it, and then you could cast something else with it.
Oh, you're talking about
the 3/2,
the rise of the Zendikar, the Electromancer.
Yeah, exactly that one. So this is like a bigger version of that.
Yeah, the condition's a little bit harder here, but I think it's still this is going to end up working pretty well, and this is going to lead to some disgusting nut draws.
I mean, absolutely absurd stuff could happen from this.
Oh yeah. Like when imagine that you just like hit on turn 3 or sorry, turn 4 and you play this and you play another 3-drop.
That's gross, right? And this is where like you could play a Falconwrath Perforator on turn 2 and even hold it back for a turn. And then the next turn, just on turn 4, you just go attack with my Perforator. It trades off, or maybe it just gets eaten. And then you just go land 4 Foragers, 3-drop, go. And your opponent's like, oh my God. And if they didn't have a way to interact, they're like really screwed at that point.
Yeah.
So I like the upside on it. I don't know what to give it though.
I think it's probably still a C.
Okay. Yeah.
Like it's tricky because when this card pops, when it does like the right thing, it's gonna, it's gonna look amazing. It's gonna be like a B, right? Yep. If you can play this into a 3-drop, that's a B. Yep. But like cards are so good these days, and most of the time this is gonna just be a 4-mana 4/3, with some upside.
Yep. So we'll say C for Famished Foragers, but with some nice upside. Festival Crasher is next. It's 1 and a red for a 1/3 Devil. It's common. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Does this count as a payoff for that deck? I mean, these cards often have a hard time fitting into those strategies.
Yeah, it's not really a payoff because it's not like I drew my Festival Crasher and I'm gonna just win the game, right? I'm like my engine is going, but it's more like it's a good card to put in your spells deck because it's going to play very close to a 2-mana 3/3, and sometimes a 5/3.
Would you play it in like random black red deck with some removal?
Probably not. You would need to be able to trigger it at relatively low cost. In order to like reliably and without like, contorting yourself in order to get some good value from it.
Yeah. The hard part is that people imagine it on turn 2 and sometimes you don't have it on turn 2. And that's the tough part because you need to be able to make it good later. I would give Festival Crasher a D. This doesn't seem like the type of card that I'm going to be running towards or putting into every red deck or anything like that.
Yeah, I think D is about right, but I think in the blue-red deck, you'll just play the card because you'll able to get some good value.
I agree. Next is Immolation. Is this a reprint or is this like a one-word? Wow. Red for an enchantment aura at common. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/-2.
You know what? This is a card that could show up in Let's Stump Vargas. This card's a reprint from Legends.
Is it really?
Yes.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah, it's a very old card. Really cool one too. It's basically a shock, but a giant growth, or like a pump spell won't stop your creature from dying because it'll just stick around. So think of this as a sorcery speed shock, and you'll get like 90% of the way there. Yes, technically sometimes you could like toss this on your like 3/3 flyer and just go to town, but for the most part, it's a shock that doesn't, again, instant speed pump doesn't actually save their creature because it just waits for that to go away and then still burns it to the ground. One drawback is it's not an instant or sorcery, so the blue-red deck's not going to get full value. Yeah. But yeah.
A little awkward of positioning in the set because of that, but this is an okay card, right? I mean, it's a C+ or something.
I think it's just a C. I mean, people, you'll always put shock in your deck. This is a little worse than shock. It's not an instant, but like, this kills their 2-drop for 1 mana.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I like it at C+. Yeah. I mean, you need to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Lambholt Harrier is next. It's 1 and a red for a 2/2 wolf at common. You can pay 3 and a red to have target creature can't block this turn. Boy, I used to like this type of stuff, but it's so expensive to pay this 4 mana to take creatures out of the equation. And it feels like with the way that the sets are designed, now that you almost never get to the point in the game where you're like happily dumping mana into a Lambholt Harrier.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we talked about with the Archivist, right? The 2-mana 2/1 with the pay 6 draw card. I like 2-drops that are good later, but not the ones that cost a ton of mana. If you look at a lot of the 2-drops I was talking up, it was like tap 3 creatures or this game's flying, like stuff that doesn't suck up your mana. I just don't, especially in a set with Flashback and Disturb, you're just not going to be like, wow, I have 8 mana, nothing to do with it.
Right.
That's not how games play out.
No,
so,
it's not.
I mean, clearly the card is fine if you need a 2-mana 2/2.
Fine. Yeah. But
it's like a C-. It's below the curve here.
Yeah, C- D+, which is a weird thing to say because this is not a bad Magic card, but there it is. Lunar Frenzy is red and X for an instant and uncommon. Target creature you control gets +X/+0 and gains first strike and trample until end of turn.
It's a lot of abilities.
So it turns your creature into, if unmolested, it becomes a removal spell plus some extra damage going through. If you can get this Lunar Frenzy off.
And it's also 1 mana to give a creature first strike, right? If you're you need to, like defensively or something.
And trample.
Yeah.
This is going to be on my short list. This is going to make a Sunset show category of some sort, like the card you hate to lose to or whatever. I don't know how good it is, but it does seem powerful to me. Like this is a type of card that you could get up to, 4, 5, maybe 6 mana and just be like, here you go, you're dead. And it might not have seemed that way. When you go from an opponent blocking a smaller creature and thinking that, okay, I might get to eat this creature, to not only is your creature dead, but you also took some extra damage, that's a pretty big swing, traditionally. And this thing's pretty flexible too. I think I like Lunar Frenzy. I think Lunar Frenzy is going to kill a lot of people.
Lunar Frenzy feels like a bit of a Searing Blaze / Fireball to me, where you're going to use it to, sometimes you'll use it for 1 or 2 mana just to win a fight, right? You're 2/2 against theirs, or you're 3/3 against theirs. Sometimes you're going to cast it for 3 or 4 mana, kill their creature, and they take 3 because you've got nothing else to spend their mana on. And sometimes you're going to spend 7 mana and you're going to kill them. You're going to attack with everything. Whatever gets blocked by a 1/1 is just going to nug them for 7 damage.
Right. How high of a grade can I go on this?
Marshall, I give you permission to give this card a B, just a B.
I can go all the way to B?
Yeah. So the reason I think it's B, because I think it will act as a 1 to 3 mana removal spell or combat trick that wins the fight, but also getting 7 mana deal 6 is a huge part of the range to have.
Yes. Yes. And you mentioned it briefly, but you can also use this on defense too. So it's not only a thing that.
This is a cool card. I'm excited to play with this card.
Yeah.
This card's going to give me a headache specifically, though, because it's going to mean whenever my opponent has mountains and I'm at low life totals, I'm going to be like, all right, so how do I not lose to Lunar Frenzy? And the answer is usually going to be I guess I just have to assume they don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds you of Embercleave or something in Constructed where you're like, well, maybe I could. You're like, no, you're just dead. Okay, so I'll go B on Lunar Frenzy. I'm in. I don't care. What are you going to give it?
I like being on Lunar Frenzy. I'm in for all the same reasons.
Okay. What about Moonrager's Slash? What is
you mean Lightning Bolt?
Oh, did I miss something? Oh, Lightning Bolt.
It's 2. That's what everyone's calling it. It's 2 in a red for an instant, deals 3 to any target, and it costs 2 less to cast if it's night. At night, it's literally Lightning Bolt. At not night, it's 3 mana, deal 3. This card is, I think, easily the best common in the set.
Okay.
It's a 3 mana deal 3 that sometimes is going to be a 1 mana deal 3.
That's extremely efficient and really good on both ends. And it goes face. Yeah. Okay. That's insane. B?
Oh yeah. Probably B plus for Moonrager Slash.
Yeah. It's right on that border. I mean, there's only so high you can go when a card does 3 damage, right? Even if it's no matter how cheap it is and limited, sometimes they have bigger stuff. Answering bombs is important. So efficiency can get you so far, but I agree. It's BB plus for Moonrager Slash. That's a funny name too.
Also, what's awesome about it is this gives you a lot of control over night, because when it costs 1 mana at night is when you want to play 2 spells to flip it back to day, if you want to do that. And the fact that you can just use this as one of your 2 spells very easily at night is awesome. If you don't want to flip it to night, you cast your 1 spell past the turn and just cast it on their turn.
Yeah. Wow. That is really cool. They had to call it that in R&D, right?
I mean, how do you not? That's just what this card is.
Mounted Dread Knight is next. It's 4 and a red for a 5/4 Vampire Knight at common. It has trample, and when it enters a battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if an opponent lost life this turn. Wow, man, these cards are so pushed. 5, so it's a 6/5 trampler if you got in for any damage at all or they lost life or anything.
Yeah, this card's solid. I mean, I think it's going to be a C because most of the time it's going to be the difference between 5/4 and 6/5 is not as big as 2, 3, and 3, 4. The bigger the numbers get, the smaller the +1/+1 counter matters. It's just going to be a solid like high end for these decks. And it's not like the aggro decks want tons of 5-drops. So I like C for Mounted Dread Knight, but we've come a long way. I mean, this is like kind of close to Colossal Dreadmaw for 5 mana, and we're just not that excited. Not that we're excited about Colossal Dreadmaw, but
yeah, I like C+ for Mounted Dread Knight. That seems like a really good top of your curve for the aggro decks. Neonate's Rush is next. It's 2 and a red for an instant common. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a vampire. And Neonate's Rush deals 1 damage to target creature and 1 damage to its controller, and you draw a card. So you can get 2 mana, deal 1 to them, 1 to a thing, and draw a card. I mean, I don't know. Is that good?
One of the things that this does well, if you're in the vampire deck and it costs 2, it guarantees a point to your opponent, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
And you get the card back. And sometimes it kills an X1 and you draw a card. And you're not going to cut this card from your deck. You're going to play this. I mean, 3 mana, deal 1, draw a card is already like. I would play that in plenty of decks. Like a Spells Matter deck's gonna be pretty happy with it.
Definitely.
So getting it on the cheap, getting extra damage to your opponent when you need to trigger your stuff looks like a good card to me. I would give a C to Neonate's Rush. I think it's just gonna be solid.
Same. Yeah, that is good. Obsessive Astronomer is next. It's 1 and a red for a 2/2 human wizard at uncommon. If it's neither day or night, it becomes day as Obsessive Astronomer enters the battlefield. Whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards.
All right. I mean, you get a lot of looting.
You do get a lot of looting. It is, again, rummaging, forcing you to make the decision up front about what you want to discard.
Rummaging is quite a bit worse than looting because you can't just do it for free. I think, again, this is probably going to fit in the category of like you're not really playing it for its abilities as much as the others, but this ability does let you churn through your deck. Like
it really does.
You can go pretty hard to play this and just like fill up your graveyard for flashback, to find the cards you need that work with night and day, just all this stuff. So I like this a little bit more than most. I would give this a C. Okay. I think this is a 2-drop you'll be pretty happy to have. Plus, it's the kind of 2-drop where later in the game, if you've got nothing going, you can just pass the turn, flip, and start rummaging through your extra lands. Actually, I like this at C+. This seems like a good way to prevent flood.
Okay. Yeah, and it's asking not that much of you being a 2/2 for 2. So C+ for Obsessive Astronomer. Next is Pax Betrayal. This is 2 and a red for a sorcery. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. If you control a wolf or werewolf, scry 2.
How sad Arlen's pack is getting stolen by Tovalar, the new werewolf dude. I actually think this card's going to be quite good because it looks like there's a lot of sacrifice stuff going on, and a threaten in that context can be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's really the thing to look for. Now, we know that the sacrifice deck is actually black-white, not black-red, so maybe it's not quite as good, but you can still snipe all of those black cards and then any other incidental stuff that's around to try to make Pax Betrayal a thing. This is a card to look out for. We won't know until we play with the format how well it'll slot in. Sometimes it looks like it's there and it's not, and sometimes, like in the last set, it didn't really look like it necessarily, and it was there. So this is definitely a card to keep your eye on. Basically, I'm going to take the mode that I like to with these type of things, which is once I start losing to it, once people start stealing my stuff and sacking it regularly, then I'll know it's the real deal. But I don't really feel the need myself to run in there and play 3 Pax Betrayal in a deck just to find out. I can find out, in the next week or so as people, after the set comes out officially, as people, kill me with it or not. You'll know right away.
Plus, if you steal a Wolf or Werewolf, you get the scry.
You do. I don't know. A normal threaten effect would be somewhere in the D to D plus range. We know that there's a sacrifice theme at least present in the set. We don't know how often it comes up or whatever. So I would bump up Pax Betrayal based on that and give it like a C. And then it could be a B. I mean, what's it called in the last set?
Price of Loyalty ended the format at B, right?
Right. Exactly.
I would say Pax Betrayal is probably going to be a C+, B-. Okay. There's a 1 mana sack a creature, kill a creature.
Mm-hmm. That's huge.
Really good with Pax Betrayal, right?
Really good.
The one thing that's holding it back a little that may make it more of a C plus is black white's more of the sack deck.
Yeah, I said that before.
Red.
Yeah, and so you're going to have to take the black part of that equation and then piece together the rest.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go like C plus, somewhere in that range to start off. But this is a card to watch, so keep your eye out for
maybe you end up blue red. you got some decayed tokens. You got some blue sack effects. I don't know.
Yeah. Next is Play with Fire. This is red for an instant and uncommon. Play with Fire deals 2 damage to any target. If a player is dealt damage this way, scry 1. Instant speed. So
mostly you're not going to get to scry because you're not going to just nug your opponent unless you're going to kill them. So the scry is not going to matter too much. Mm-hmm. But obviously shock is just fine. I like this a little more for constructed when the Is It Phoenix decks need to like play their third spell, so you might as well get some extra value from it. But
sure,
I like it. Shock with upside. I mean, that's good. That's C plus to me.
C plus again. Yeah, there's quite a bit of cheap ways to kill creatures. I think that the white decks and the like vampire decks are going to be getting their creatures killed in their early game quite often. Next is Purifying Dragon. This is 3 red for a 4/3 dragon. It's uncommon. It's got flying, so this is nice. And whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature defending player controls. If that creature is a zombie, Purifying Dragon deals 2 damage to it instead. So it just snaps off the decay zombies.
Oh yeah, humph.
Yep.
I mean, 5 mana 4/3 flyer with little pinging upside is pretty sweet.
Really good.
I'm in for that. Looks like a B minus.
Yeah, I have it a B. I would just say B for Purifying Dragon. Yeah. Raise the Effigy. This is red for an instant at common. Choose 1, destroy target artifact, or target attacking creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
So it's funny. In constructed, this is destroy target artifact with really minor upside. In limited, it's target attacking creature gets +2/+2 with really minor upside.
It really is.
I would play this if you want a +2/+2 to an attacker, which I think is actually solid in the way the red decks are looking here. In black red, you play a 2-drop, attack them, they block. You play this and play another 2-drop. You're pretty far ahead at that point. So
definitely,
no, it looks like a C to me. I think
so too.
Again, got to be aggressive, but in that context, C.
Yep, C for Raise the Effigy. Next is Seize the Storm. This is 4 and a red for a sorcery. It's uncommon. It says create a red elemental creature token with trample, and this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of instants and sorcery cards in your graveyard plus the number of cards with flashback you own in exile. And by the way, it has flashback for 6 and a red.
I love this card. In the spell deck, it's like a 5 mana 7/7 that flashes back.
And it's a trampler. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You have to be working pretty hard, but this is a build around B for sure.
And does it spot itself the 1/1?
You know what? I think that it does.
It goes to the graveyard, so as long as it's sitting there, and if you flashback, then it's exiled. So
no, I'm not sure. I don't want to give people the wrong idea. I think that the spell resolves and then goes to the graveyard after the spell resolves.
And so the creature may have been on the battlefield with 0 toughness. I would say it does. I don't know. That's just my gut.
Looks like it. Producer Jeff is saying it works. So yes.
Okay. So if this is the only,
yes, you can make a 1/1 twice if you want.
All right. It's part of the resolution. Okay. So yay. At any rate, this card is sweet in the blue red as a build around for the reasons that you described. Looks like at least a B in that deck. I mean, just making 2 huge trampling creatures to finish the game after you've kind of dirtled around and maybe killed some of their stuff seems like the name of the game.
Yeah, I like build around B for this.
Okay, build around B for Seize the Storm. Next is Stolen Vitality. This is 1 and a red for an instant. It's common. It says target creature gets +3/+1 until end of turn. If it's your turn, that creature gains trample until end of turn. Otherwise, it gains first strike. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Where the first strike's the better one. This would just be a better card if it always gave first strike.
Yes,
but. You know what? It's cool flexibility, and it kind of makes sense that I mean, trample on your turn, first strike on theirs is pretty neat. Looks like a D to me, but it's a cool design.
I agree. And, maybe it is just a good combat trick. +3/+1 and trample on your attacking creature will win you a lot of combats you wouldn't have and get in for extra damage. That's pretty good. So, yeah, I would say D plus C minus for Stolen Vitality.
Sure.
Also good words to live by there in the flavor text. Thermo Alchemist, 1 and a red for a human shaman at uncommon. It's a 0/3 with defender, and it taps to deal 1 damage to each opponent. But here's the kicker. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you untap it. This is a reprint.
It's reprint on uncommon now. It was a common before, I think. Yeah, Thermo Alchemist is a pretty strong card. In the spells deck, it can really be annoying. Like this just does, 1 to 2 to maybe 3 damage a turn, unblockable. It just sits there and defends. In the spells deck, I would give this a C+. Not really interested outside of it, except in the Bloodthirst deck, it can be a really good enabler.
Oh yeah, good point. Hey, that's really nice.
Probably why it's uncommon, is my guess.
Probably they just didn't want people to run these out on turn 2 and then just start getting it. Yeah, I would say Thermo Alchemist is going to be very good in this format. Particularly in red blue as you described, but it does have applications outside. I would say B- for Thermo Alchemist. I think it's going to be good.
The Bloodthirst probably kicks it to B-.
Yeah. Voldaren Ambusher is next. It's 2 and a red for a 2/2 vampire archer. And it's got, and it's an uncommon. It says when Voldaren Ambusher enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, it deals X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker where X is the number of vampires you control. Jeez.
Lot of there's like a chain of dependencies here.
Yes, very fragile.
You need to have dealt damage to them. You need to have multiple vampires to kill something big. This already gives you 1, right? But you need to have probably multiples. My guess is this doesn't work out as well as you might hope. Like there will be some games where you hit them with your your interloper, the 2/1 flyer, play this and kill their 3/3. And it's just like, wow, this card's busted. But there's going to be a lot of games where like, yep, this is a 3-mana 2/2. That's sure what it is. Yeah. On balance, that's probably a C because if you do the work, it can be really, really good. But most of the time, just be aware this card's going to fail. It's got a decent amount of fail cases.
Yeah, it's funny. We give it a C on balance, but in reality, it's either a B or a D when it hits the battlefield.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Last non-double face red card is Voldaren Stinger. This is red for a 1/1 vampire warrior at common. Voldaren Stinger has first strike as long as it's attacking. Oh God. And it has activated ability, 2 and a red. It gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So here finally is your Bloodthirst enabler, right? Nobody wants to block a first striker that they can just pump and eat your creature. So they're going to take the 1. And when they do, you're going to cast stuff like Voldaren Ambusher, etc., and you're going to get the job done here.
Really sweet little design. It's
Beautiful.
A C. Just put it in your Bloodthirst decks. Don't really put it in your other decks. Yeah.
And I would also say don't be afraid to use removal on it if it's going to be a continued source of hitting you for 1 a turn. And you're not going to have good blocks for it. Sometimes you just got to kill their 1.
Also a really good target for pump spells. Just having first strike means that like, even if you don't necessarily want to spend all the mana pumping it or you're not in a position to do that, a pump spell works really nicely with first strikers.
Yeah. I'm going to play that card. It's just that meets the bar. Okay, double face red cards. First one is called Fangblade Brigand. It is 3 and a red for a 3/4 human werewolf at uncommon. You can pay 1 and a red, and Fangblade Brigand gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. And it also is daybound. If you transform it, it becomes Fangblade Eviscerator, which is a 4/5 werewolf with 2 activated abilities. One of them is 1 and a red. It gets +1/+0 and gains first strike. So just like on the front. And the other one is 4 and a red. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. Jeez.
Yeah, this is a brawler. Your
really
opponent can't really block it at 3/4 that gets first strike.
No. Yeah. 4 mana 3/4 and it gets +1/+0 in first strike.
Yeah, so it becomes a 4/4.
Yeah.
And then once it's a 4/5, it's even harder. Plus this is this is the kind of thing where if you don't want to cast a spell, you could just pump this multiple times to hit them for 5 and then flip it because you cast no spells. So
yeah, beautiful design.
I'm in it probably B- on Fangblade Brigand.
Can I just say B?
You could, yeah. I'm just thinking this on the board is just going to be massive,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. And I also think that if you do flip it and you pay the 4 and a red with any type of board, it's going to make your opponent's life just absolutely miserable. This thing becomes a 6/5 first strike, just a 6/5 if you pay that. And then all your little 1/1s or whatever get bigger too. I like B on Fangblade Brigand.
All right, I'm in.
Flame Channelers next. It's 1 and a red for a 2/2 human wizard at uncommon. When a spell you control deals damage, you transform Flame Blade Channeler. And by the way, you control spells that are on the stack, so you know. It becomes Embodiment of Flame, which is a 3/3 elemental wizard that says whenever a spell you control deals damage, put a flame counter on Embodiment of Flame, and you can pay 1 and remove a flame counter from it to exile the top card of your library, and you may play that card this turn.
I am in for Flame Channeler.
Wow.
There's just enough red damage spells, including like the Vampire Deal 1, like the Shock, all that stuff, that flipping this does not seem difficult at all. And when you flip it, you get a 3/3 that kind of circuitously draws you a card whenever you play a spell.
Wow. That awesome. Is sweet.
This looks like a B+ to me.
Yeah, I like that. You do need to have a few spells in your deck that can flip it, of course, so.
Well, if you have 4 spells in your deck that deal damage, this is a B+. If you have 5 or 6, it becomes even like that. That's, becomes even. Oh, 4 spells, it's about a B. 5 or 6, it's a B+. And it shouldn't be that hard, to get some amount of those.
So the question becomes, let's say you have 2.
I would still play it, probably.
You put Flame Channeler in your deck still, right?
Yeah, because the thing is, you have this card in your deck. So if you can, you'll try to slow roll these cards dealing damage.
Yep. Exactly. Okay. Really nice there. BB+ for Flame Channeler. Next is Harvest Tide Infiltrator. It's 2 and a red for a 3/2 human werewolf at common. It has Trample and Daybound. When it transforms, it's a Harvest Tide Assailant, which is a 4/4 trampler.
Yeah, pretty vanilla. You're not going to be too excited about this, but obviously you'll play it. It does do some amount of like the Nightbound or Daybound enabling. And it looks like a C. C.
It looks like a C. Yeah. And these aren't the same thing as the cards that you can buy back from the graveyard or whatever. They don't provide you value. So it is really just more about the stats on them, which is why we're a little more middle ground. Next is Spellrune Painter, which is 2 and a red for a 2/3 human shaman werewolf at uncommon. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And it has Daybound. When it transforms into Spellrune Howler, it becomes a 3/4. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
I like this for the spells deck. One thing that's kind of awkward is you transform it into a 3/4, but then if you play 2 spells, it just flips right back.
Oh, funny. And this thing does part of the whole thing is to cast spells. So that is kind of going against itself a little bit.
But you got to whack them for 7 here.
Yeah.
So I like it well enough. I mean, on the front side, like these are the decks that more often could have like instants up. So you can just like play it, pass, flip it, and then just like they can't really attack into the 3/4 because you play your instant, it's a 5/6. And then on your turn, you get to attack and play a spell, hit them for 5, and they just kind of keep playing 1 spell per turn sort of thing. I think the blue-red spells deck will be pretty happy to put this card in the deck. And the, kind of average like red-green or whatever deck or red-black deck is not going to be interested, which probably makes it a C.
Do you think that they can just play it though? Like if I'm red-green and I have a couple of burn spells and a couple of pump spells and whatever, I mean, this thing's a 2/3 that like it's kind of hard for them to block because it has threat of activation, right? Of me just casting an instant on anything. And when it flips, it's like impossible to interact with in combat if I have any amount of mana or cards up, right?
Yeah, it's just going to be okay.
It's just okay though. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you want to give it? C+ for spell?
I like C, but it's going to be a C+ in the spells deck. I don't think it's nuts in the spells deck or anything.
Okay. Yeah, I like it a little bit better for even the non-spells deck just for threat of activation, but I agree, it's not great. Tavern Ruffian is next. It's 3 and a red for a 2/5 human warrior werewolf at common. It doesn't have any abilities outside of Daybound on the front, but it does transform into Tavern Smasher, which is a 6/5. Gets big. 4 mana, 6/5. I don't know. Is that great?
Nah, this looks pretty medium to me.
Me too.
Like, it's a real cost to try to flip a werewolf. You have to play no spells on your turn.
Right. That is brutal.
One thing that is worth noting with all of the werewolves is your opponent's also going to be messing with day and night.
Yes.
So it's not inconceivable that you can kind of like free roll on them. But yeah, I would still say Tavern Smasher is like a C-.
Yeah, I think so too. C- for Tavern Smasher. Last red double face is Village Watch, which is 4 and a red for a 4/3 haste human werewolf. and it's uncommon. It has Daybound. If it flips, it is Village Reavers, which is a 5/4 werewolf that says wolves and werewolves you control have haste. This one's not that great.
Not that exciting. I would give this probably a C as well.
Yeah, this one might be worse somehow. I guess if the haste is really great.
5 mana 4/3 is not like the most exciting stat line.
No. The whole point of the werewolves is to get them down early and then transform them into something much bigger than you normally have for that amount of mana. Okay. That brings us to green, our last color. Our first card is Bounding Wolf, and this is 2 and a green for a wolf at common. It's a 3/2 with flash and reach.
This card's really funny, but I don't think particularly good.
No.
One thing about flash in green is this gives you something to do when you don't want to play a spell in your turn.
Yeah. So that's its primary function, right? The reach part's kind of interesting, but it only has 2 toughness, so it basically would trade for anything anyway.
Yep. I mean, you don't want to really trade this for their vampire interloper. I mean, it's fine, but you're not really getting too much value. It looks like a C- to me.
Yeah, me too. C-. But that thing that you mentioned is the thing to keep in mind with Bounding Wolf. Next is Bramble Armor. It's 1 and a green for an artifact equipment. It's common. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Okay, so you get a freebie, and the creature gets +2/+1, which is really nice. And then kind of the joke is that the equip cost is 4. So that first one's free, but then they got you hooked.
Yeah, this is how they've been doing equipment recently, and I think it plays pretty well.
It does.
Not every time, but like they frequently have done this. I like this. 2 mana, give a creature +2/+1, and then you end up with the Bramble Armor left over. I bet this is going to be pretty good.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so.
Looks like a C+ to me, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. I worry a little bit about spending 4 mana on it when you might have so many other things to do that it may just be a one shot, but +2/+1's legit. Like that upgrades your creature very significantly. I'll say C on Bramble Armor. See where it goes. Broodweaver is next. It's 3 and a green for a 2/4 spider at uncommon. It has reach, and when it dies, you get a 1/2 green spider token with reach.
Man, Penumbra Spider was just a hell of a card. Huh? That was this card, except you got a 2/4 when it died. Yeah. This is still good though.
Yeah.
4 mana 2/4 reach dies into a 1/2 reach. Really good at defending you, because if your opponent has to use a removal spell to clear the path, you still have a blocker, and it just gets you card advantage kind of naturally. So I like probably B- for Broodweaver. I just think it doesn't ask anything of you and gives you a lot of stats.
Yeah, I like B for it. I mean, I just think it's like the biggest stop sign, you know? Candlelit Cavalry is next. It's 4 and a green for a 5/5 human knight at common. It has Coven. Candlelit Cavalry gets trample until the turn. I am not that impressed by this.
No, the Coven part is basically a freebie. Like you don't really care too much.
It's just, I don't think I care about a 5 mana 5/5 even with or without trample. That's a human knight in this set. It just doesn't really seem to go with anything.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a C-, and it's fine. It's fine to play in your deck. You're not really going to feel bad if you play it.
Yeah, I mean, it does have good stats. It's just, I think I need a little more these days. Next is Clear Shot. Oh, this card was really good. 2 and a green for an instant and uncommon. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. 2 things to note here. It's instant speed, and it's a bite, not a fight.
Yep. Fantastic
really good card. Yeah, awesome card. B for Clear Shot.
Easy B.
Yeah, easy B. Also, the sequence that you've outlined a few times is really nice here, where you can like have a werewolf on the day thing, not play anything, pass the turn. It transforms into something bigger, and then Clear Shot basically anything off the board. That's pretty strong. Contortionist Troop is next. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, this is just such a funny card. So it's X and a green, and it comes 0/0 comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on it, and then it has Coven. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So it really does. They contort themselves into any size that you need to make Coven go.
That's really funny. I do like it.
And once you trigger it, you can distribute the counters, hopefully, so that you continue doing so. Plus, it's, a 3 mana 2/2 or a 5 mana 4/4 or a 7 mana 6/6, etc. that hopefully gets a counter at the end of the first turn you play it, because it should be pretty easy to do that, given you can choose how big this is. So I like the card a lot. I mean, I think it's probably like a C plus, but I think it's a pretty sweet card.
Okay. Yeah, I like C plus for a Contortionist Troop. It actually this model fits well into this thing with Coven. Dawnheart Mentor is 2 and a green for a human warlock at uncommon. It's a 0/4. And when it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 white human creature token. And it has Coven. You can pay 5 and a green. Target creature you control gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn, but you can only activate this if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers. Do you want to be dumping 6 mana? I mean, that is really powerful, right? +3/+3 and trample, and you can just choose, like you can attack first and then make them block and then do it. It's just an absolute nightmare. And then an 0/4 that brings a 1/1 with it, so you're 2/3 of the way to Coven is obviously quite powerful as well. The real question I have is just, is this a place that I'm going to be spending my mana late, the 6 mana? My inclination is yeah, right? I mean, that's a game-winning effect.
So you get a 1/1 and an 0/4. You get 2/3 of the way to Coven, yeah.
Yep. And then so the real question is just, let's assume you have Coven, because this gets you so close to it and also provides 2 of the harder powers to get, 0 and 1. Will you win the game if you get to just activate this? I think, yeah. Like,
I don't know what win the game, but
well, you know what I mean. I mean, is it worth it to dump 6 mana a turn into this effect? And my inclination
at some
is
point,
yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that the biggest, I think, skepticism I have is, you know, like if you have a 4/4 that you can pay 6 to give +4/+4, when you attack them, they just take 4, but that's a good deal for you. You spent no mana, they take 4. Threat of activation worked. This threat of activation is not quite as, like by itself, this isn't really doing much. Whatever the third creature is that you're attacking with has to pack kind of a punch, because you don't really want to spend 6 mana to deal 3 damage.
Right.
What this is getting you is them being unable to block your creatures.
Right.
So I think I do like the card, because getting 2/3 of the way towards Coven is pretty nice. Yep. Especially since 0/4 is going to be one of the harder slots to fill. Right. So it should be really easy to have this. So playing this into another Coven creature is going to be just really good. All your stuff's going to start working. So, and then late game it really does have a good ability. I would give Dawnheart Mentor, I would give it a B-. I would give it a B-.
Okay. Yeah, I like B- for Dawnheart Mentor. Next is Dawnheart Rejuvenator. It's 3 and a green for a 2/4 human warlock at common. When it enters a battlefield, you gain 3 life, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color.
Oh, I like this card.
Yeah.
The gaining 3, we've seen this card before. It's like a centaur of some kind, and it played pretty well. Just getting 3 life, getting a 2/4, and then tapping for a mana of any color. Just a nice package all around. I mean, it's a C, but it's a nice one.
This is definitely a card the aggro decks don't want to see. 2/4 gain 3 life is kind of a tough thing for them. And then we know that in this format, you will actually be able to spend the mana. Sometimes there's an argument about, like, I don't really want my 4 mana card to be the thing that gives me mana. But here with Flashback and those type of effects, they end up being 7 mana pretty consistently. So you'll actually be able to spend it. I like CC plus for Dawnheart Rejuvenator. This could be one of the better green commons if the format plays out the right way. Defend the Celestus is 2 green for an instant. It's uncommon. It says distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures you control. Instant speed. Do we like this?
I mean, you can dump 3 counters on the same creature, 2 and 1 or 1/1/1. I like this. This is gonna win a combat and leave something pretty nice behind a decent amount of the time. I mean, imagine your opponent's attacking you with like 2 or, God forbid, 3 creatures, and you think they have this card. How are you blocking?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's 4 mana. It's pretty expensive. You do need creatures on the battlefield to make it good. The blowout potential is there, but it won't happen very often. I think I would start out a little on the downside on Defend the Celestus, but recognizing that the upside's definitely there. I think I would give it a C+. I'm not in love with this card, but it absolutely has blowout potential. Like you will lose games and combats to this when it happens.
Yeah, I like C+ for Defend the Celestus. Just it will not work some of the time or be too clunky some of the time, but some of the time it'll work and it'll just be like crush your opponent's spirit completely,
A Celestus for the rest of us. Dryad's Revival is next. Is 2 and a green for a sorcery at uncommon. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Sorcery speed. It flashes back for 4 and a green. I don't think I'm interested. I don't think I want to do this, Luis.
It's a long way to go to get 2 cards.
Yeah, and the problem I see is that some of my cards are going to have the ability to be cast from the graveyard anyway, which is kind of a more efficient way to do this. It's already going to have added a decent amount of mana to the equation. So the fact that this is a sorcery also is really tough, I think, because of the day-night stuff. Like, this would be something that you could at least have if it was instant speed to do on your opponent's end step or whatever. But I just don't think I want to go this far for like a conditional draw 2, even if they are 2 spells.
It's just too much mana. Yeah.
I would give it a D.
I would give it a D. The best place to use Dryad's Revival is in maybe a long game control deck that's just struggling for card advantage, or a deck that has a lot of discard and mill where you just get to kind of free roll the flashback.
Yeah, that part that's where I would like it. So there you go. If I'm self-milling or discarding a bunch, then I'd play a Dryad's Revival, no problem. Next is Duel for Dominance. This is 1 and a green for an instant at common. It has Coven. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, put a +1/+1 counter on the chosen creature you control. Then the chosen creatures fight each other. So
it fights no matter what, but if you have Coven, you get a +1/+1 counter.
Yeah, that's how we would say that in English. It's instant speed.
Yeah. In straight up fight for 2 mana is not very good, but if you can reliably get the +1/+1 counter, that's a pretty huge upside.
It's a game changer.
I would say it's a C, but if your deck's good at getting Coven, it goes all the way up to like a B-.
Yeah.
It's just hard to overstate how much that matters in the fight, you know?
It really does. Yeah. I mean, the fact that, you know, as usual, fight cards are in green for the most part, and then you tend to have the bigger creatures. That's not always the case, though. Yeah, C up to B- depending on your Coven ability. Eccentric Farmer is next. This is 2 and a green for a 2/3 human peasant at common. When Eccentric Farmer enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. Then you may return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. That's pretty cool.
So he's feeding these like beetles or whatever.
Yeah, he's like a pumpkin. I like this card.
I mean, you're very likely to mill a land. So it's a 3 mana 2/3 that gets you a land. That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is C+ for me.
I like that too. Yeah. And you get to free roll the other 2 cards that you mill, or even the 3 if you miss on the land. And that's upside for you. Next is Harvesttide Sentry. This is 1 and a green for a 3/1 human warrior at common. It has Coven at the beginning of combat on your turn if you control 3 creatures with 3 or more different powers. Harvesttide Sentry can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less this turn.
Yeah, that's kind of medium. It's 2 mana 3/1 that sometimes gets a little harder to block at a point where they probably have things that can block it. So play it if you want a 3/1. Don't play it otherwise. Looks like a C-.
Same C- for Harvesttide Sentry, maybe even D+. Howl of the Hunt. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment aura at common. It has Flash. It enchants a creature. When it enters the battlefield, if enchanted creature is a wolf or werewolf, untap it. And the creature gets +2/+2 and has Vigilance.
So it's, 3 mana. It's a Feral Invocation, but has the additional bonus of getting to untap to ambush with a wolf or werewolf. Seems pretty sweet. This is similar to Defend the Celestis in that it's a pump spell that sticks around, so you can kind of get this blowout. Again, another nice thing to play if you don't have if you haven't spent mana on your turn. I think that it's probably like a C-.
Yeah, I think so too. D+ C- is where these come down, but at least this thing is giving you 2 kind of critical pieces if you're going to take the risk to play a card like this. 1, the ability to ambush one of their creatures, which can be, you can use it as a removal spell if you get lucky. And 2, the stats are there. I mean, +2/+2 is huge. It completely changes the creature from where it's at to where it goes. So if you feel like your opponent isn't going to be able to instant speed interact with you much, then Howl of the Hunt goes up quite a bit. Might of the Old Ways, 1 and a green instant at common. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And then Coven, if you control blah, 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 you draw a card. Why did I think this name was already taken on some other card?
There's just a bunch of cards that are very similarly named.
Okay. Is this card good? This is getting the card back is like pretty nice on a mediocre combat trick.
Oh yeah. Also, it checks for Coven after the +2/+2, which makes it a lot easier to get Coven.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Like if you have a 1/1 and 2 2/2s, no matter if you pump one of the 2/2s, you'll get Coven.
Yeah, interesting. That's pretty good then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you're playing a heavy creature-based deck, it doesn't have to be insane.
This card's actually going to be really good. I think this card's a C+ in a heavy creature deck.
Okay,
like
C+.
It's a cantrip pump spell a lot of the time.
Yeah, that is strong. That really does change the game. Okay, C+ for Might of the Old Ways. Put it in your creature decks. Path to the Festival is 2 and a green for a sorcery. It's common. It says search your library for a basic land card. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle. If there are 3 or more basic land types among lands you control, scry one. And this has flashback for 4 and a green. Oh man, Dare to Dream. Path to the Festival. That is going to set you up for some pretty spicy decks. This is the, we've done 30 drafts and I want to start messing around. I want to start playing some Path to the Festivals for sure. Yeah,
this is pretty sweet. I don't know how much support there's going to be for a 3-color deck.
It doesn't seem like it, but maybe the splashes on some gold cards or flashbacks are still just a thing.
It wouldn't. My inclination is you should absolutely not play a 3rd-color land just to get the scry.
Yes, that is not
like if you don't need it. So don't do that. But there's some good gold cards in the set. There's a lot of gold cards in the set. So playing a red-green deck that splashes a black card does not seem unreasonable at all.
No. You can spend the mana usually on flashback, right?
Yeah, in a straight 2-color deck, I would play this if I was a ramp style deck, which some of these decks might end up being. Looks like a C, but the decks that want it really want it.
Yeah, it's funny too because it turbos, right? Like you play this on 3, then you have 4 mana, then you play your land on the next turn, and then you can flash it back. So you can really just kind of go. Yeah, C- probably for Path to the Festival, but like you said, the decks that want it will really want it. Next is Pestilent Wolf. This is 1 and a green for a 2/2 creature wolf. It's common. You can pay 2 and a green to have it get Death Touch until end of turn. That seems really underpowered, doesn't it?
It's fine. It's a 2-mana 2/2 that later in the game forces through damage or forces a trade, right? So if you're like Morbid or have Bloodthirst cards, which you could easily have in a green deck. And then if you really need to, you could just leave the mana up and then trade for whatever their big attacker is or stop them from attacking.
Okay.
I don't think the card's amazing, but it's a 2-drop that has relevance later in the game. That gets a C for me.
Okay. I'm going to say C- on it just because.
Okay, I'll go C+.
Just because we've learned that sometimes these 2-drops with relevance aren't that good. I do think this one passes the test, though.
I'll still go C.
Okay. Next is Plummet. 1 and a green instant, a common. It destroys creature with flying. These are traditionally sideboard cards. There have been a few formats where it's crept in as main deckable, but from what we've seen so far, this looks like it's not going to be one of those. So I'd start with that as a good sideboard option. Make sure that you board it in when you see multiple targets. If you just see one flyer, that's probably not enough reason to bring in the Plummet. If you get stuck with it in your hand and your opponent doesn't draw their flyer, you've really punished yourself pretty badly there.
If you see one flyer, but they're also, they're also playing blue, then I wouldn't mind siding it in. Like if you see one flyer out of like a green-white deck, I wouldn't bring it in.
Okay. But it's a good sideboard card. It's a sideboard B, like it's 2 mana, instant speed, knock something out of the sky. Return to Nature. Speaking of sideboard cards, 1 and a green for an instant, a common. Choose one. Destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard.
Yep, that is a sideboard card.
Full on sideboard card, but boy, it does have its hits. I mean, the graveyard thing, don't be afraid to use that. Sometimes you bring this in for a specific artifact or enchantment, but your opponent clearly hasn't drawn it. But they do have a flashback card. Don't be afraid to use your Return to Nature to nab that out of the yard. Sideboard, probably B again or B- or something for Return to Nature. Rise of the Ants. This is 4 green for a sorcery. It's uncommon. It says create 2 3/3 green insect creature tokens and you gain 2 life. And hey, if you got 8 mana lying around, you can flash it back for 6 GG.
Oh, I love this card.
This is dope.
It's for 6 mana, you get 6/6 worth of stats and 2 life, and then later you just get to do it again.
Yeah.
The 2 ants plus the token, or plus the life rather, mean that you're probably going to survive to hit 8 mana, Rise of the Ants looks like a B to me.
It does to me too.
I think this card is going to be strong.
I do too.
It also, like, one removal spell doesn't do it. Like, it's just got a bunch of good stuff.
Yeah, the 2 life is a big game changer there for when you fall behind early as well. And it really does make cards like Dawnheart Rejuvenator and Path to the Festival, this actually gives you a thing to aim at here, 8 mana to flashback. I like B for Rise of the Ants. Next is Shadow Beast Sighting. Is that Bigfoot? 3 and a green for a sorcery at common. Create a 4/4 green beast creature token, and then you can flash it back for 6 and a green.
Love this one too.
The common version of Rise of the Ants.
Yep. 4 mana for a 4/4. A little more vulnerable to bounce than most, but still 4 mana for a 4/4. And then later you just get another one.
Yep. Not as good. Like, C plus, maybe?
I would put this at C plus, B minus.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to think through the game where your opponent plays this on turn 4 and you're like, wow, I don't, that's going to kind of shut down my board, and then they're just going to get another one. I don't know. It does just, and even if they just kill this, at some point you'll get another one. Like, it just guarantees a second one, assuming the game goes long enough. That's pretty good. Yeah,
it is pretty good. And 4/4 is definitely big enough to matter, right? It blocks really well. It can attack, etc. Let's go B minus on Shadow Beast Sighting. I mean, that's really good 2-for-1. Yeah. Snarling Wolf is green for a 1/1 wolf. It's common. You can pay 1 and a green to give it +2/+2 until end of turn, but you can only do that once per turn.
This one I like less than the vampire because green is less likely to just care about getting things through.
Yeah, it's arguably a better card, although I think the vampire is still probably a bit better, but it's so out of context here compared to the vampire.
Yeah, and this isn't really the mana sink I want in my werewolf deck anyway. Just it's kind of small. I don't know. It's fine. I would still say it's a C, but I just think it's going to be a little weaker. I mean, you play this, like, you attack with it. They can't really block it. 2 mana is not that much to pump,
Yeah. I think I want to go D plus on it.
This on turn 4. I don't know. It seems pretty good.
I just always go to I take it. Like, I feel like on turn 4, if they're going to spend 2 mana to get me for 2 damage, I'm winning. And if I take it, I take 1. It's like, who cares? You just burned a card on this.
I can see C minus on this, I suppose.
Okay. D plus on Snarling Wolf. Trending downwards. Tapping at the Window. Okay, so that's not creepy enough. 1 and a green for a sorcery at common. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard, and you can flash it back for 2 and a green.
All right. So it's like a impulse for only creatures, it doesn't hit lands, and you get to flash it back. So it's a 2-for-1, but
self-mill.
If you in a self-mill card, but you could miss. I bet there's going to be some decks that will be very happy with this.
Definitely.
I think it's a C. You just have to make sure you have a big creature count and want flashback card draw, which not every deck is necessarily going to want.
Yeah, big creature count. That's the balance that you have to hit. But I would say C minus for tapping at the window, though. I mean, it doesn't do anything to affect the board. It's a little bit later of a game. Like, if this is your turn 2, you're probably not thrilled with it, but it's an enabler that gets you value while doing so, and that's a good thing. Yeah. Timberland Guide. That's a reprint. That's 1 and a green for a 1/1 human scout at common. And when it enters a battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That can be himself, by the way. So that's something that you can do.
Yeah. Just kind of medium card, like C minus looking card here.
Yeah. I think it's gone down a little bit. But yeah, C minus for Timberland Guide. Still a fine 2-drop. And then Turn the Earth is next. It's green for an instant and uncommon. It says choose up to 3 target cards in graveyards. The owners of those cards shuffle them into their libraries, and you gain 2 life, and then it has flashback for 1 and a green.
No, I'm not in for this. Even as a sideboard card, I don't think this is good because you're giving up a card to prevent them from flashing back or using Disturb on their cards. You're just down a card still.
You're kind of giving them what they were going to get anyway, but you had to spend the mana. Yeah.
And then imagine you draw this and they don't draw those things, and now you just have kind of a terrible card in your hand.
Can we just say F? There may be a build around potential. Remember, sometimes in Innistrad sets, they will give us some really cool graveyard based combos and stuff. And maybe that. Yeah,
for sure. If you're super self mill and you can loop around and shuffle your cards back in and all that, this can do some cool stuff, but that's just not what's going to happen most of the time.
Right. So F, and then maybe you'll play it occasionally. All right. Transform cards. First one is called Bird Admirer. It's 2 and a green for a 1/4 reach. It's a human archer werewolf at common. And it has Daybound. When it transforms, it's Wing Shredder. Jeez. It's a 3/5 werewolf with reach. Goes from admiring the birds to shredding them.
I actually like this. 3 mana 1/4 reach is the kind of card you want when you're waiting for your werewolves to flip, and a 3/5 reach is pretty burly.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like it too.
It looks like a C.
Me too. I think so too. Yeah. And green is definitely showing itself to be the slower defensive, make big mana and do big stuff late in the game type color, and Wing Shredder / Bird Admirer is fits into that. Burly Breaker is 3 green for a 6/5 human werewolf at uncommon. It also has Ward 1 and Daybound. When it transforms, it's Dire Strain Demolisher. This thing better be huge. And it is. It is an 8/7 with Ward 3.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Keyword big.
I'm liking this one because 5 mana 6/5 Ward 1 is pretty annoying for your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it transforms, it's really hard to kill. So Dire Strain Demolisher looks like a C+.
Yeah, I like C+ for Burly Breaker, Dire Strain Demolisher. Next is Death Bonnet Sprout. This is green for a 1/1 fungus. It's uncommon. At the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. Then, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, transform Death Bonnet Sprout into Death Bonnet Hulk, which is a 3/3 fungus horror that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile a card from your graveyard. If it was a creature card, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Hulk. They grow up so fast, it says.
This is pretty sweet. For just 1 mana, you will eventually get a 3/3 that grows and messes with their graveyard.
Definitely.
And it gives you some good self-mill stuff. I actually kind of like this at B. I just feel like
I do too.
When you play it early, it's going to kind of get your stuff going, get you some card advantage by milling, flip not too distant future. When you draw it late, you'll play it on like turn 5 along with a 4-drop. It'll just flip right away next turn, and then it'll end up, as a 3/3 that grows to a 4/4 and a 5/5. So I like Death Bonnet Sprout a lot.
Yeah.
1-drops that are good are just really sweet.
They really are. I like B for Death Bonnet Sprout as well. Really strong. Next is Hound Tamer. This is 2 and a green for a 3/3 human werewolf at uncommon. It's got Trample. So 3 mana 3/3 Trample is good. And you can pay 3 and a green to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Wow. So lots of places to put mana on an already well-statted creature. And then it has Daybound. It becomes Untamed Pup, which is a 4/4 Trample werewolf. And other wolves and werewolves you control have Trample. And it has that same ability to pay 3 and a green to put a counter on a creature, a +1/+1 counter on a creature.
Yeah, I mean, the front side of this would already be good. The back side is just, pure gravy. So 3 mana 3/3 Trample with a pretty solid activated ability, the one that gives you the perfect way to spend your mana when you have nothing else to do because you want to flip your werewolves. So
and it affects the board.
I like B+ for Hound Tamer.
I do too.
Really good.
I do too. Also, the fact that the activated ability is a threat of activation scenario where it can affect combat without even having to pay is really good. B+ for Hound Tamer. That card seems great. Outland Liberator is next. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2 human werewolf at uncommon. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. That's pretty good. And then it has Daybound. If it flips, it becomes Frenzied Trapbreaker, which is a 3/3 werewolf that says you can pay 1 and sacrifice it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. But also it says whenever Frenzied Trapbreaker attacks, destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. Nice.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah.
I like this. I like this at B. It's a 2 mana 2/2 that flips into a 3/3 and then has good, disenchant potential on both sides. Plus the flip side gives it just straight up for free.
Yes.
So looks good to me.
I like B for Outland Liberator. I mean, I would play it probably as just 1 and a green 2/2 and pay 1 sack it because the upside of destroying an artifact or enchantment is really high because people only tend to put good ones in their deck. So you're usually getting a really good card. Last green card is Tireless Hauler. This is 4 and a green for a 4/5 human werewolf at common. It's got Vigilance. So 5 mana 4/5 Vigilance, and then it transforms off of Daybound into Dire Strain Brawler, which is a 6/6 Vigilance. I am much less excited about this one.
Yeah, this is one I can easily pass on here.
See?
I think Tireless Hauler looks like a C minus, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go C minus on that. Now, as far as multicolored, we have already covered all of those, right? There's no commons.
Correct. There's one flip artifact we'll want to remember to hit, but yes.
Okay, so let's get the regular artifacts first, which is, the first one is called Crossroads Candle Guide, and it is 4 mana for a 3/4 Scarecrow. It's an artifact creature. It's common, and when it enters a battlefield, you exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, and then it filters mana. So you can pay 2 mana of any color to make 1 mana of any color.
So it's basically 3 different things, none of which are good rate. 4 mana 3/4, exiling 1 card, or mana washing. Looks like a D. If you're a 3-color deck with bad mana, it's not the end of the world to play this, but it's not great.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. Not super excited about it. D. Next is Jack-O-Lantern. This is 1 mana for an artifact at common. It has 2 different activated abilities. You can pay 1, tap it, and sack it to exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, and then draw a card. Or you can pay 1 and exile it from your graveyard to add 1 mana of any color. You could play this, right? It basically play 2 mana to take out a card from their yard, which can definitely matter, and you get the card back.
Yeah, it's not a bad rate. At exiling, because you get the card back. It's also up to 1 card, so you don't have to wait for a card to hit the graveyard, and then you get to color filter later. This is the kind of card that you're probably not going to put in your deck very often, but every now and then you will, and it'll be fine. Like a D+ level card. It
is, yeah. This is the type of card that we always look at and say you could totally do it, but it ends up replacing something that you would actually rather have. But you could also bring it in out of the sideboard for heavy graveyard-based decks and give up basically nothing.
Yeah.
Moonsilver Key is next. It's 2 mana for an artifact. It's uncommon. You can pay 1 mana, tap it, and sacrifice it to search your library for an artifact card with a mana ability or a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. So if you're playing 3 colors, you probably could play a Moonsilver Key. It's not very mana friendly. It's 2 mana and then 1 to sack it, but it does turn itself into a land. I think, let's see. I don't think there's a circumstance that I would play this.
No. This card looks quite bad. It looks like an F to me. It's just too much mana.
It's too much mana. You can get away with it if the casting cost is 1, because you'll always keep a hand with 1 mana, but not for 2. So Moonsilver Key gets an F. Next is Silver Bolt. It's 1 mana for an artifact. It's common. You can pay 3 mana, tap it, and sacrifice Silver Bolt. It deals 3 damage to target creature. If a werewolf is dealt damage this way, destroy it.
I mean, they're getting the price down to where these things might be decent.
Yeah, and then you just get to Mize on any werewolves.
Yeah.
God, I could see worse than putting one of these in your deck.
Oh yeah, I think Silverbolt is fine. I think it's a C, but when you play against a werewolf deck, it's going to be like a C+, and it might even be better.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, definitely sideboard it in against werewolves. That's really good. Last, so C for Silverbolt, and then Stuffed Bear. Oh God, the artwork. That must have been some really difficult artwork, right? Like you're like, I have to make a bear, but it has to look real, but also stuffed, which they actually did. So kudos. Stuffed Bear is 2 mana for an artifact at common. You can pay 2 mana. Stuffed Bear becomes a 4/4 green bear artifact creature until end of turn.
F. I just think it's too expensive.
Okay. Yeah, there's probably just going to be other.
It's just in a turn. So every time you have to want to attack with this, you have to pay 2 mana. By the time this is not too burdensome to use, you could have just put a 5 mana 4/5 in your deck and get way better value.
Yeah, I agree. F, not going to play it. Our double-faced artifact is called Mystic Skull. It's 2 mana for an artifact. It's uncommon. You can pay 1 mana and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Or you can pay 5 mana, tap it to transform it into Mystic Monstrosity, which is a 5/6 artifact creature construct that says lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color.
I was so in for this being like a mana rock that eventually turned into a 5/6, but it's not. It filters mana. It doesn't add mana. You are not getting value from this. So I would give Mystic Skull an F.
That's tough. But I don't think it's very good. So I am with you on that one. And that brings us to lands, where we've got Evolving Wilds. So that's a land that taps and then sacrifice it to search your library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. We've seen variations of this card in many, many, many sets. If this is your first time playing Magic, then this is a card that you would like to have in your deck. You don't need to prioritize it more than, say, the C or C- level, unless you are planning to splash, where the mana fixing becomes more important for you.
Yeah. I would say it's like a C. It's fine.
I take these at a C, roughly speaking. Field of Ruin is here. This is a land. It's uncommon. It taps to add colorless mana, or you can pay 2, tap it, and sacrifice it to destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. Each player searches their library for a basic land card, puts it on the battlefield, and then shuffles. Basically, I never play these in limited.
Yeah, you can't play this in limited.
Yeah.
Like, the only time you can ever play it in limited is if they have a really powerful activated ability land. There's just none in this format. So, well, no, that's actually not true. There is one in this format, Hostile.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Maybe you could consider sideboarding it in, but I really never have actually done that. So I think that, I think in general, you should just not play Field of Ruin.
And then there's no duels at common or uncommon.
Nope.
So no cycle of those, and that means we're done. Right.
All right.
Didn't miss anything.
Not bad. 4 hours.
Yeah. Nice tight 4 hours right on the button for us. Yeah. So this set looks so sweet. I mean,
it does.
I know it's a little much that they keep going back to the same place. Hey, we're back at Innistrad again.
But it's great though.
Yeah. But it's kind of like if you've ever been to like a place that you love to go to vacation. Like, have you ever been to Hawaii before? It's like, you don't go, oh, really? We're going to go back to Hawaii. It's like, we're going back to Hawaii, right? Like, it's such a great place to visit. And so is Innistrad in a slightly different way. But when I see self-mill, flashback, all this value stuff, I am in. And I'm super stoked for this set. And I think it's going to feel really great to play, after having played effectively a core set for a while. So yeah, super stoked for it, and it's going to be great. We're going to do the Rare and Mythic show next week. So if you want to know all the spicy details on the Rares and Mythics, we'll be back with that show next week. We want to thank our sponsors before we take off. Channelfireball.com for all things Magic related. If you want to get your pre-order in for Innistrad Midnight Hunt, make sure you check out Channel Fireball to get your singles or sealed product or whatever it is that you'd like to get. You can head over to Channel Fireball to get that pre-order. And if you do get anything over there, if you'd use the affiliate code LR, we do appreciate it. We also want to thank our new sponsor, FTX. Once again, if you want to check them out and kind of see what they're about, there's some links in the show notes for you to look at. It's ftx.com. It'll take you over to ftx.us if you're a United States based person. Outside of that, it's a different site, which actually has more features as it turns out. But either way, we encourage you to check them out if you're interested in the crypto space, as they are the leader. They're the one to go to if you're interested in investing or looking into it over there. And thanks again, FTX, for coming on board. We're really happy to have you here, and we look forward to doing some great things together. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast on lrcast.com, including every episode that we've ever done sitting there that you can listen to at your leisure whenever you see fit. We also have links to the other things that we do, like our streams. We both stream. I stream once a week, for sure, and on Tuesdays, and Luis streams multiple times per week usually. And you can find the links to that as well as our social media and everything else on the front page of lrcast.com. That is going to do it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next week.
Well, I'm going to keep this brief because this was such a long show. But, if you're into 4-hour-long podcasts, I feel like you're more amenable to things like The Wheel of Time, which is a 12, 14 book or long book series. And it is my favorite book series. It's what got me into sci-fi and fantasy. And the reason I bring it up is Amazon is making a TV show of it. And we just got to see the trailer recently, and it looks awesome. So I would check out Wheel of Time. It's high fantasy epic, not nearly as gritty as like Game of Thrones or anything like that. But, it's got magic. It's got, various like conflicts and duels and swords and sorcery. It's got a lot of really cool stuff going on, and I love the book series too. I'm actually rereading the book series, so pretty sweet. And again, if you're in the market for things that have a lot of content, well, Wheel of Time's definitely there for you.